Hey everyone. Welcome back for the sixth and final part of Escape to Kumo. As always, huge thanks to all of my Patreons. Making these videos would be impossible without you guys' support, especially with all the restrictions YouTube places on my type of content. After this video, feel free to head over there, where you can find about 30 other different stories to enjoy. Also feel free to send me any messages over there if you have any questions or even if you just want to chat. Link to all of that will be in the description. Anyways, everyone, enjoy the video. Setting up the board, 1 month after declaration of war, Naruto called upon his war council to review the current state of affairs. After the meeting with the daimyo, his declaration of war was signed and ratified by all of the main daimyo, and many of the greater and lesser lords had written letters of support. Most of them had picked the side that they wanted to win, and the odds were heavily in Naruto's favor. The Uchiha Hokage with his pet daimyo were now surrounded and isolated. One of Naruto's first move was locking down the ports of Hai no Kuni in the elemental oceans. This move was enough to disrupt 40% of the foreign trade that kept Fire Country supplied. The next move was Ame, Iwa and Kumo locking down Hai no Kuni's northern border. Orders, ratified by the daimyo of each nation, prohibited travel into Fire Country and prevented traders from crossing the borders. This eliminated another 15% of foreign trade. Border outposts and detective seals were immediately deployed and set the early stage for the war. Of course, Konoha and the Fire Samurai didn't appreciate this. However, they quickly learned the folly of attacking forts reinforced with seals. It was Konoha's turn to experience what the Uzu invaders felt when they attacked fixed positions reinforced by seal masters. Within the first month, the casualty reports were skewed 10-1 in favor of Kumo. The Bridge of Divine Bolts was the point of heaviest fighting. Konoha had attempted to destroy the bridge in a variety of manners that included explosives, fire jutsu, water jutsu, earth jutsu, etc. The reinforcement seals on the bridge prevented its destruction, and the protective barriers thwarted many attempts. The 3 divisions of Kumo Shinobi and the elite Whirlpool detachment were more than enough to thwart the attacks for the first month. Iwa had pushed in on the Suna border and applied pressure with no resistance there. For 1 month, they had made steady advances into Wind Country and set up a series of forts that would secure their supply lines through the desert. This pressure denied Hai no Kuni precious metals and oils that were valuable to the war effort. Iwa wasn't overextending, and Iwa wouldn't be the primary focus of Konoha, but the pressure they applied would make Konoha choose where to prioritize and decide what to sacrifice. Ame was more than capable of defending itself. Amy, she and Daru led a mixed division of Kumo Shinobi to reinforce Ame and conduct destabilizing operations in the northwestern portion of Hai no Kuni. The Hattori clan combined with Ame's forces were more than enough to score multiple wins in that sector. During the check-in this morning, Hanzo declared that no further support was needed, and he was going to hold position until Stage 2 was activated. The southern border of Kumo was another hotspot in the war. It was hilly, well defended, and the southern border was reinforced with seals. The only thing holding the stalemate in this sector was the presence of Hidan, Kakuzu, and at least 2 Jinchuriki. That made destabilizing operations more difficult, but they were more than capable of holding the line. Naruto entered the war room flanked by Kaoru and saw that his council was fully assembled. In Daru's place was a messenger that would write orders and convey any questions from Daru. Messengers that linked to Kiri and Iwa were also present. Kushina had traveled with Rado, her assigned familiar from the Eagle clan, to be present for the meeting in person. B. Yugito, Anko, C. Itachi, Mabui, Samui, Kakashi, and Z, the Anbu commander, were present alongside the Shinobi Council. Naruto took his position in front of a hovering chakra globe that provided a view of the elemental nations. This globe rested in the center of the circular table with markers all over it. Naruto took a moment to gather his thoughts before speaking. Alright everyone, thank you for coming. Stage 1 has been a success and we have secured our borders and allies. Before I get started, does anyone have recent updates from your divisions? Itachi stood up. The counter-infiltration corps caught 20 root that attempted to enter the country. They were easily subdued, but they are probing our defenses and they were able to get 10 miles into Kaminari no Kuni. Interrogation was impossible due to immolation seals. The messenger for Kiri spoke up at this point. The plant creatures that can assume others' identities are showing up more in Kiri. The identification seals are proving to be an effective counter, but the slowing of movement and interactions has created a limiter. The limit is slowing down operations and Kiri is not able to provide support for Stage 2. Naruto nodded. Thank you for letting me know, Kamiki. Is anyone else reporting similar problems? Kakashi and Anko stood up at the same time, but Anko differed to Kakashi. These creatures have appeared in Kumo's southern border as well. One of our disrupting teams was killed in combat and the creatures attempted to re-enter the fort. The SEALs caught them, but we lost one of our guards when they detonated explosive tags. Naruto frowned, so, they are resorting to suicide tactics. Makes sense since we don't know how many of the clones they have. Uzu is working on a better counter to the plant creatures. Any report on that, Uzukage Dono? Kushina stood up. Karen is leading the effort. So far, we don't have anything definitive. What she has determined is that they are hypersensitive to natural energy. Unfortunately, you are the only sage, and the other biju don't have your negative emotion sensing. Naruto nodded at the new information. When we initiate stage 2, all divisions will have a clone to sense them out. If those clones are destroyed, then those forces are to fall back until another clone can provide support. The identification seals are not practical for a battlefield scenario. Kishi, scribe for Ame, stood up. Reikage-sama, Hanzo-sama says that the plant creatures are susceptible to lightning fields and fire jutsus. They are easily able to absorb water and earth jutsu. He reports that his salamander's poisons are not effective against them either. B stood up. Yo, lil bro. Stage 2 is about the elite. With your clones it will be an easy feat. Have the boys and girls hold things down while you and I go around. Anko facepalmed. Translation: the elite forces can easily move in and attack at this point. We should have regular forces hold down defensive operations and we should strike out. We can use the eagles to go above. Naruto chuckled and shook his head. I hear you, B. However, I want to know where their elites are before we move out. Uzukage-sama, what is the status of New Uzu and Wave Country? Kushina stood up. No elites sighted. We estimate 3,000 samurai and 1,000 shinobi in the 3 forts that are holding the bridge on the Hai no Kuni side. The divisions there are not enough to take such a force out. We do not have access to northeastern sector until we remove that. No further attacks from them? No, Reikage Dono. Defensive operations as well as the blockades are going smoothly. Kushina replied. My lord, Tammy, the messenger from Iwa, started. Tsuchikage-sama wishes to know how far you want his forces to push. They have taken over the northwestern quarter of Wind Country. Keep the current pace. We don't need too much too fast. The most important thing is securing supply and reinforcement lines. Notify us immediately if and when the resistance increases. Naruto answered. Yugito got a nod from Naruto before speaking. These Jinchuriki that are on our southern border present the best targets. I say we push from our strongest point to begin stage 2. However, Reikage-sama, I request that you yourself abstain from the attack. Denied, Naruto answered immediately. I am your leader, but I am not a porcelain doll. I will be involved in key operations and subduing biju will be easier for me than anyone else besides Itachi and Mikado. Even then, they may not be able to override the Sharingan control that the biju are likely subjected to already. Yugito bowed. My apologies, Reikage-sama. I am simply concerned about your health and welfare. Naruto offered a sincere smile to Yugito. I know, Yugito-chan, and it is appreciated. That being said, see, I need the sensor core to identify where these Jinchuriki are. If they are not in the main forts, then where are they? C raised from his seat and bowed. My apologies, Reikage-sama. They are outside our current ranges. I believe that you should be able to sense them once you are over them. B stood up. I know that we don't want to kill, but that makes this situation a little ill. Jinchuriki will put up a fight and I don't know if capture is right. Naruto looked firmly at B. I know that Juki probably agrees with you on this, but capture should be our priority. I can break their seals and free the biju should they agree to my demands. The portal to Makai is almost ready for activation and I will return them there to stave off the invasion. Z coughed a little bit and stood hesitantly. Reikage-sama, if we can free them, then shouldn't we use them to help end this war? I do not understand why you choose to fight a war on 2 fronts.
Naruto sighed and rubbed his temples. Z, I know that you are newer to my full situation.
Makai will affect us whether we want it to or not. Should the Kitsune clan and Octopus clans fall, then we face an invasion from over 150,000 orcs and minotaurs. Each of them representing a high chunin to low jonin level threat. That is the practical reason. My personal reason is that the demonic contract that was signed at my birth requires me to support my Kitsune queen. Z bowed in repentance. Forgive me for questioning your will, Reikage-sama. Naruto waved him off. No problem, I know it is a lot to understand. Alright, inform your forces and those assigned to stage 2 that we move out in 3 days. We will move simultaneously and commence operations at 10:30 p.m. Stage 2, a decisive attack. Hidan was heavily dissatisfied with the war so far. When he thought of war, he thought of senseless slaughter, sacrifices, blood and death everywhere. Thus far, he has been holed up in a fort and only had the opportunity to sacrifice 2 shinobi. This was lower than his usual monthly average by far, and he was getting stir-crazy. The stalemate on the Kumo border bored him terribly and he needed a release. Oi, Uchiha, when do we get to have some fun? Jashin-sama is parched and craving blood. Hidan asked Adate Uchiha, Jinchuriki of the Sanbi. Adate looked at the Jashinist with his Sharingan active. We are waiting on orders. If you attack any of the forts, then you will be captured by seals the same as last time. Until we can neutralize their defenses, our orders are to hold the line. Kakuzu growled at his irritable partner, just shut up, Hidan. Once things escalate, you will have more sacrifices than you know what to do with. Hidan huffed, I am tired of waiting. And I am tired of your grumbling. If you don't stop, I will rip out your heart and integrate it into myself, Kakuzu threatened menacingly. Adate rubbed his eyes wearily. He believed in the Uchiha supremacy, and he would follow Fugaku's orders, but was it necessary for him to babysit these two? That is enough out of the two of you. I will send you on a patrol tomorrow morning. Maybe you can find some sacrifices there. Hidan nodded and sat back down while muttering a prayer to Jashin. Kakuzu reclined back in his chair and closed his eyes. Adate returned to reading Icha Icha. He chuckled perversely as he thought that the Toad Sanin was actually good for something. He continued reading the salacious pages and hoped that his reading wouldn't be disturbed. Naruto walked out of the command center on the southern border of Kaminari no Kuni that held down Raijin Pass. It was one of the only access points to the country, and if anyone wanted to bypass it, then it meant a 50-mile detour to the west. This fort, Raijin Fort, held down the pass, and it was where Kumo stalled out the Yondaime's attack during the Third War. The mountains surrounding it were minefields full of explosive tags and other traps. The Konoha side of the border was a similar no-man's land. These factors led to the pass being kept in a stalemate for the first month of the war. Behind Naruto, Itachi, Samui, Mabui, Yugito, Kakashi and 2 squads of Boltonbu followed. They were going to make full use of the Eagles to break this stalemate. As Naruto exited the command center, he saw that the fort was abuzz with activity as the regular forces got ready to launch the follow-on operations once the signal was given. He entered the courtyard and weaved through the hand signs for his summoning jutsu. All activity halted as Georgia, Virginia, Texas and Tennessee appeared in the courtyard. He whistled and within a minute, Delaware flew down and landed next to Naruto. Naruto-sama, the plant creatures are present in the mountains. It is likely that they will report the flight of our warrior eagles. Delaware reported. Naruto nodded and scratched Delaware's head, it's all right. Itachi's crows have narrowed down our search area and we should be able to strike before they can properly raise defenses. Virginia was jealous of Naruto's attention to Delaware, and she nestled her head into his chest. Naruto, we are ready. We can cross that distance in 5 minutes. Naruto chuckled and scratched under Virginia's beak. Thanks, Ginny. All right, everyone knows their assigned tasks? He got confirmation. Good, if you are forced to dismount for any reason, then you are to activate your beacons. This is just a bombing run for most of you. If you are engaged by the Jinchuriki, you are to use your Hiraishin Kunai. If there are multiple Jinchuriki, I will send a clone for support. If we find the Akatsuki, they are Kos. Seals off, let's go. You are so sexy when you are in command mode, Rudo-kun. Hikari purred through the mind link with her hands already started to drift downwards. Thanks, Richan. Since we are at war, I was thinking we could use tonight to debut your return, any thoughts? Hikari's sensual purr turned into a bloodthirsty growl, nothing could make me happier. The sooner we crush these petty mortals, the sooner I get to roast some pigs and overgrown cows. Naruto chuckled, alright, well, I'm looking forward to it. Naruto answered as he hopped onto Virginia's back in front of Samui, Mabui, and Itachi. Let's do this, ladies. 5 minutes later, Virginia, Tex, Rado and Tennessee circled the Konoha-held fort on the other side of Raijin Pass. Naruto was gathering natural energy while everyone else was raining down explosive hell on the forts. The panic screams, burning fires and smell of death filled the night air and carried into the skies. Virginia dodged a bolt the size of a person before she screeched loudly and sent a series of wind blades at the emplacement. It was torn asunder as 6 5-meter-long wind blades shredded the ballista and shinobi manning it. Naruto's eyes cracked open, I got them. Ginny, pull out and leave the assault to the others. Georgia will follow us when we separate. Destination is 2 miles south-southwest. Virginia banked out of her rotation in the attack while the other Eagles continued the assault. The echoes of explosions sounded further and further away as Virginia and Georgia carried their riders, the elite strike team, towards their targets. Naruto rose out of his seated position. and he started flooding his body with chakra as his 5 tails flailed wildly behind him. Adate's reading was disturbed by a plant creature that rose out of the floor. The Zetsu clone reported and immediately, the fort at Raijin Pass is under attack by eagles. The Kumo shinobi are preparing an attack. You are to get ready and move to reinforce the fort. Reinforcements from other locations will follow you. Yes. Hidan cheered as he jumped out of his chair and slung his 3-bladed scythe over his back. Finally. I get to sacrifice some heathens to Jashin-sama. Kakuzu wasn't so rearing to go. Do we know who is involved in the attack? Have we quantified the attacking forces? Kakuzu's instincts were flaring. He was only in this for the money, and he honestly didn't have a good feeling about this war. On top of that, he was pretty much being held prisoner. Sure enough, Adate made a hand sign and Kakuzu's mind became cloudy as the loyalty seals kicked in. From the back of his mind, Kakuzu wondered when the bastards were able to get such a seal on all 5 of his masks. That's what he got for working with a lunatic with aspirations of world domination. Adate smirked as one of the most powerful shinobi in the world was subdued. The power of the Uchiha is absolute. Let's go. Adate ordered dispassionately. The Zetsu clone chuckled and shook his head. Stupid humans, slaves to their own ambitions. Just hope they don't die. The Zetsu clone chuckled as it sank into the ground to take an overwatch position. As Hidan, Kakuzu, Adate and 2 platoons of reinforcements, 1 shinobi and 1 samurai, were running toward the sounds of distant explosions, Kakuzu and Adate jumped aside as 6 massive wind blades tore into the ground. Hidan just took the hit, picked up his detached arm and started cussing up into the sky as he flailed his detached arm wildly. He was then forced to do the survival dance as a volley of kunai and shuriken pelted the ground around him. After the volley ended, 6 figures dropped in front of the Konoha reinforcements. Yugito, Kakashi, see, you guys are on mob cleanup with my clones. Keep them off of us. Itachi and Samui, you guys take Kakuzu. Don't let your guards down. Samui, handle the religious fanatic. Remember that conventional means won't be enough to kill him. Naruto ordered. Sure thing, babe. Go get M, Mabui said in a sexy tone. Yugito growled aggressively and cracked her knuckles. If they don't put up a fight then you will have to give me a proper challenge, Raikage-sama. Naruto's sweat dropped. We have this and a fort to clean up, Yugi-chan. Yugito scoffed, says the man taking all the big fish for himself. Oi, heathens. What the fuck are you chit-chatting about? Hidan shouted as Kakuzu sewed his arm back on with his threads while the Jashinist plucked kunai and shuriken out of his chest. Kakuzu felt the trickle of sweat going down his back turn into a steady stream. Hidan, shut up. This is the Raikage we are dealing with. Adate stepped in. Shut up you two and just deal with your targets. Internally, Adate had just demanded more chakra from the Sanbi than he ever had with the influence of his Mangekyo Sharingan. He understood why the Hokage had him murder his wife. Sacrifices were needed for the power to change the world. Adate felt his body enveloped and for the first time he had 3 tails of the Sanbi's chakra waving behind him. He felt his mind go on autopilot as his feral instincts took over. Oi, Kakuzu, dose that blonde brat have fucking tails? Hidan shouted as the battle began and drew every eye of the Konoha forces to Naruto, who was in his kitsune form. Kakuzu's eyes widened, and fear gripped his heart as he saw the Raikage casually waving 5 tails behind him. Hidan, don't underestimate any of these people. If we want to survive this, go all out from the start. Hidan gripped his scythe and rolled out the newly reattached arm, for the glory of Jashin-sama. He charged at the 6 people that were 50 feet away. That was when 6 became 60 as 54 kitsunes formed out of Naruto's chakra and the battle was on. After summoning his clones, Naruto wasted no further time as his Sage mode was amplified by the power of his lightning armor. Clouds filled the sky as Naruto disappeared in a loud crackle of blue lightning. The blue blur, accompanied by the hum of potent electricity, appeared in front of Adate who was in his chakra cloak. A fist crashed into the Jinchuriki's face and sent his glowing form plowing through trees for nearly 100 meters. That punch would have killed any normal man, but the biju's yokai was a potent defense, especially the Sanbi's. Despite that, Adate was jarred by the impact of the fist on his face and the subsequent impacts of his back on multiple trees. As he skidded to a halt, he was forced to roll out of the way as a lightning-covered foot dropped and created a crater nearly 30 feet wide. Adate was forcibly rolled by the pressure created by the impact, but he was able to right himself and get back on his feet. Adate unsheathed his tanto and activated his Mangekyo. The normal Sharingan would never be enough to track the immense speed of the Raikage. As he sank into his stance, he saw Naruto smirk fairly as he unsheathed Heaven's Blessing. Adate paled when he saw the size of the greatsword, and when Naruto's left hand was wrapped in tempest chains, Adate paled so badly that he almost appeared to be translucent. Naruto blurred forward with a greatsword sheathed in lightning. There wasn't even a clang as the sword sheared straight through the tanto, but Naruto was surprised when the greatsword buried itself in a muffled thump. Naruto looked down and saw that the lightning was embedded in coral that had encased Adate's arm. By the look on the Uchiha's face, he was surprised too. That didn't stop the Uchiha from smirking and thinking that this gave him the advantage. Naruto yanked the sword out of the coral and the lightning dispersed the coral before it was able to spread up the sword. Adate's smirk fell when he realized that he didn't have any blade now, and his eyes allowed him to barely duck in time. As the greatsword cleared his head, Adate lashed out with a punch to Naruto's chest. All that he got in return for his efforts was a shock of lightning to his hand and a raised eyebrow from Naruto. Adate realized that conventional warfare wouldn't work, and he channeled chakra into his eyes. Black flames erupted and attempted to catch the lightning-encased form of Naruto. As if they could, Naruto was the fastest man in the world, and most likely had been for a while at this point. Naruto dodged the flames and channeled Tempest chakra into his right arm. He called out Tempest Lariat as he lunged at Adate. Adate knew he had missed, and he turned around just in time for his Sharingan to pick up the blue blur and the insanely toned arm encased in 3 colors of potent chakra that was coming for his neck. He couldn't move in time, but his use of the Sanbi's chakra reacted instinctively to protect the Jinchuriki's neck. That being said, the coral couldn't stand up to the potent mixture of Tempest chakra and it was shredded in mere moments. Naruto forced his arm down and released the built-up Tempest chakra into an explosion of lightning, wind and sharpened water. Naruto felt that the attack connected and penetrated the yokai cloak. He knew it wouldn't be enough to end this fight, but it was more than enough to lay him out. If only he could just kill the guy already, but that would be against Hikari's wishes. They wanted to capture and extract the biju to send them back to Makai. Thus, Naruto was exercising restraint. Adate groaned from the bottom of the newly formed crater as he rolled onto his side and used his arms to prop him up. He coughed out blood from his dented airway and his eyes spun wildly as he lost the last of his rationality due to overpulling on the Sanbi's chakra. His MS spun wildly. And a purple chakra skeleton sheathed in red yokai formed around him. He stood to his feet and kept channeling the yokai to his eyes. A full torso and head formed along with 2 red swords around the Uchiha. Naruto knew that this would give him a fight and he instinctively released his chains and flared his chakra. Inside, Hikari also pushed a bit of her own chakra through their soul connection to offer some help. This was the first combat test of this, and she didn't want it to negatively affect his combat abilities. 3 taels worth of power enhanced Naruto's own potent yokai and it had some interesting effects. First, Naruto naturally started channeling wind chakra along with his lightning shroud. The combination of wind and lightning was a known bloodline called swift release. This would increase Naruto's already insane speed even further. Second, his tempest chains each crackled loudly with the potent release of their chakra. The shrouds now extended a full foot off of each chain and Naruto's tails crackled vibrantly. Finally, Naruto's eyes turned a deep aquamarine blue as Hikari's yokai deepened the normal lightning color of his orbs. Naruto disappeared with tempest chains wrapped around both fists. Within 5 seconds, there were 10 cracks all around the Susanoo form. The speed with which it happened made it impossible to track. In fact, Naruto tripped after the final blow and went flying nearly 100 meters away from the shattering skeleton. This gave Adate enough time to scream in frustration as his chakra repaired the damage to the Susanoo. Hee hee, Rudo-kun. That was funny. Be careful and wrap this up though, Itachi and Mabui need some help. Hikari chided. Naruto stood to his feet and shook off the disorientation caused by the increased speed. Got it, Hikari-chan. Thanks for letting me know. Naruto disappeared in a crackle of white and blue chakra and there was an explosion a moment later as the Susanoo torso went flying. Naruto didn't stop there, he jumped into the air over the Susanoo that was still sliding backwards on the ground. He unwrapped his Tempest armor and sent 10 Tempest chains down at the chakra construct. 2 chains pierced and wrapped around each arm of the Susanoo. 4 chains pierced the torso of the Susanoo and wrapped around Adate. The final 2 chains wrapped around the neck of the Susanoo. In a brilliant flare of Tempest chakra through the chains, the Susanoo shattered and Adate screamed out in pain and desperation. The chains wrapping around Adate rapidly absorbed the Sanbi's chakra and Naruto stopped the flow of Tempest chakra to them. Instead, the chains wrapped tightly around the body and absorbed enough chakra to put the Jinchuriki into a catatonic state. Naruto let his lightning armor fade and he absorbed his chains before he unsealed a pre-made stasis scroll. A puff of smoke later and Adate Uchiha was clinging to life within a stasis scroll. At the beginning of the battle, Samui faced off against Hidan with a single Naruto shadow clone backing her up. Samui had ordered the clone not to get involved, so the clone just watched on with arms crossed and a smile on its face. He wanted to record this fight for his boss. It was the least he could do to repay the boss for how much lovin' the clones got from boss's wives. He. The first sacrifice to Jashin-sama will please him greatly. What a fine piece of ass. Surely Jashin-sama will let me enjoy your body after I sacrifice your soul to him. Hidan ranted as he ran forward with his scythe. Before he could clear the distance, a potent streak of lightning came from the Naruto clone and burned a small hole in the Jashinist's shoulder. I recommend you don't talk about boss's wife in such a way, you deranged lunatic. The clone warned before turning to Samui. Sorry love, just couldn't let that one go. Samui gave the clone a knowing grin and a wink. Stick around and I may make it worth your while once this is over, clone-kun. The clone blushed profusely and thanked his boss and the gods. Shut up, bitch. You die today, Hidan said as the hole in his chest was already closed. Hidan lashed out with his three-bladed scythe, which was parried easily by an Uzumaki katana that was sheathed in lightning chakra. Samui didn't stop with a simple counter, her second slash left a gash on the torso of the mad Jashinist. The man screamed out in pain, but a moment later it seemed to turn to ecstasy. This confused Samui for a second and she was forced to dodge the scythe once more. Samui dodged and parried out of the way of a seemingly endless series of slashes. The slashes were wild and intense, but the openings he created were covered by the endless procession of reckless attacks. Samui dodged out of another diagonal slash and used the time to pull a tag out of her vest and she immediately channeled chakra into it. The lightning barrier that sprang to life blocked the scythe and electrocuted the Jashinist. Hidan cackled loudly as the pain converted to pleasure seamlessly within his insane mind. Samui clicked her teeth and used this brief break to come up with a plan while Hidan repeatedly attacked the barrier while reveling in the pain it caused him. Samui nodded to herself as she pulled a bundle of tags out of her pouch. After the latest strike to the barrier, Samui dropped the barrier and tossed the kunai at the Jashinist. It implanted itself in his chest while 5 tags fizzled with chakra. Samui turned around as a blinding flash of chakra light briefly illuminated the night. Hidan screamed out in frustration as his eyes were blinded by the explosion. Damn you. You bitch. Jashin-sama will fuck your ass for all eternity once I sacrifice you to him. Samui used the blinding to get around behind Hidan. She channeled a massive amount of Raten chakra to her hands and slammed them on the ground as she called out, lightning style, supreme electromagnetic murder. The overflowing lightning chakra tore through the ground. And Samui guided it towards her flailing target. Hundreds of millions of volts tore through Hidan and caused his body to glow blue with electricity. The voltage burned his hands to his scythe, stopped, restarted and stopped his heart again before it burnt Hidan's eyes out of their sockets. The false immortality repaired the damage, but it wasn't fast enough. Samui recovered from her electromagnetic murder and dashed forward with her katana. The lightning chakra severed the Jashinist's head from his body, which earned more cursing from the lunatic. Samui couldn't begin to fathom how he could still scream when he was just ahead. Nor could she understand this immortality. What she did know was that there were now so many ways to torture this class criminal. Samui sauntered over and casually picked up the head that alternated between trying to bite her and cursing at her. Samui put the head down and faced it towards the Jashinist's body. She smiled at it and spoke in a cheery tone as she sealed the body into a scroll. Okay, so, batshit crazy asshole that worships a murderous god, here is the thing I want to test. I am going to seal your body and burn the scroll. Will you start regrowing your body then, or are you just going to be a cursing head? Hidan's eyes widened in fear at the thought. Don't you dare, you insane bitch. Oh, I dare, Samui said as the body disappeared in a puff of smoke. She laughed at Hidan's rambling before she pulled out a blank tag and wrote a seal on it. Now, you see, I am not as good as the other DBs at Fuinjutsu, but I am still a master. Now, lunatic-kun, this is a chakra disruption seal. Can a talking head survive without chakra? Hidan attempted to bite Samui as she placed the tag on his forehead. The energy immediately died down and Hidan started mumbling, I will regrow my body and destroy every hole you have before I sacrifice you to Jashin-sama. Samui frowned and pulled out another blank tag. That's just unreal. Your immortality is something interesting. Now, spend your eternity without being able to talk. Now, you are just ahead. She finished as she placed the second seal on the bottom of his chin. She stood and sealed the head into a storage scroll. She didn't want to waste a stasis scroll on the insane bastard. Let's see if he could survive a pocket space without oxygen. Itachi and Mabui had the hardest fight of the battle by far. Kakuzu was a fearsome and experienced opponent that had access to 5 chakra natures and a good mastery over them. Not to mention, through the Earth Grudge Fear, Zhangjiu, bloodline, he could use multiple elements at once. The thread-like beings that composed his body were semi-sentient, and they allowed him to steal his enemies' hearts to use them as his own. The first 5 minutes of battle was spent with Itachi frontlining against Kakuzu while Mabui played support with Fuinjutsu. Her barriers absorbed more than one fire style, piercing migraine, the preferred fire jutsu of Kakuzu. The chakra absorption barrier was overloaded by Kakuzu windfire combination jutsu that turned the rock to slag and incinerated trees. Luckily, the barrier held long enough to protect the two, and they were starting to understand the most effective way to combat this foe. Itachi was frustrated by the fact that Kakuzu's Earth Style, Diamond Armor and Earth Style Earth Spear were so effective at countering her close-range jutsu. Her sword, sheathed in lightning or fire, wasn't enough to penetrate the hardened skin deep enough to leave a severe wound. Not to mention, each time she closed in, she would then have to evade the wind and fire masks that were darting around the battlefield. Failure leads to lessons learned when in the hands of prolific geniuses such as Itachi and Mabui. Itachi eventually figured out that the masks were the chakra core, and the threads were their defense. Samui caught Kakuzu in an electrocution trap and bought Itachi and herself enough time to take out a mask apiece. With wind and fire down, the fight became more even. However, it also enraged Kakuzu. Lightning and water masks took their place on each of Kakuzu's shoulders after he removed his cloak. Steel-like threads erupted from his body and mouth and made him look like a monster of legend. Kakuzu parried a sword slash from Itachi and dashed toward Mabui, who was constructing a seal. The silver-haired beauty was sent flying by an earth-hardened fist, and she was only saved by Itachi grabbing Kakuzu's attention. Mabui was recovering from the blow when Kakuzu made his move. A water-style, water-colliding wave was combined with a lightning-style, electromagnetic murder. The tidal wave was aimed at Mabui, and Itachi acted instantly to protect her sister wife as much as she could as she appeared in front of her, and her Susanoo absorbed most of the impact of the impromptu tidal wave. The shock of the lightning in the water tickled Itachi, who was used to fighting against Naruto potent lightning chakra. However, the chakra construct couldn't fully protect Mabui, who let out a bone-chilling scream. Kakuzu had a mere moment to enjoy the scream before his whole body erupted in pain. A blue blur hit him hard enough in the head to turn his head 540 degrees. The Zhangjiu threads were the only reason the bastard was alive, but the stun state cost the Taki missing nin. Naruto's katana pierced his back and exited his chest through his earth heart. The enraged Hanyu that was operating on instincts to protect his mate didn't stop there. Tempest chakra overwhelmed the sword and began disintegrating the body. The steel threads couldn't hold up against the potent and destructive mixture of chakra. Kakuzu's body went slack as the earth heart was pierced. The electricity coursing through the body prevented the other masks from shifting into place. The call from Itachi to destroy the masks was the only cue Naruto needed for chakra chains to pierce the 2 masks on Kakuzu's shoulders. One flare of Tempest chakra later and the masks crumpled to nothing, and the threads went slack. Without the chakra cores, the Zhangjiu bloodline died and left the former Taki missing in a crumpled mass of threads. After enjoying the death of his opponent, filled with moans of ecstasy through the soul link from Hikari, Naruto looked up to see Itachi applying a medical seal to Mabui, who was still twitching on the ground. Naruto's chakra flared in concern for his mate, and he was by her side an instant later. Mabui offered him a weak smile, which earned her a hug and a trip via Hiruzen to Fort Raijin. Naruto handed her off to medics there and flashed back to Itachi to finish the fight with the reinforcements. "Oh, Kaka ni, it is just 100 reinforcements." Kakashi growled sarcastically as he dropped another samurai off his blade. "Stupid honorary little brothers, stupid rakage." Yugito, covered in her 2-tailed cloak, just laughed as her extended claws ripped out the throat of a Konoha Chunin. "Ha ha ha, quit your bitchin'." The position of laziest genius shinobi in Kumo is already occupied by Daru. Wait. A Konoha Jonin begged. Is that Kakashi?" He stuttered out, which caused a noticeable flinch from Itachi, Yugito and the clones. Sure, Kakashi may have sun-kissed blonde hair now, but the gravity-defying nature of his hair combined with a sealed eye patch over his left eye was enough to give him away. Kakashi blurred forward with his hand encased in blue lightning. The stunned shinobi was never able to confirm it before a chirping hand pierced his heart. You just had to say it out loud. Kakashi groaned as the 20 surviving shinobi formed up and began muttering. "Hatake Kakashi?" A recognizable Jonin, Aoba, asked. "I thought you died during the invasion. I helped lay your body to rest." "Sup, Aoba. I guess the jig's up. So, you fellas want to surrender?" Kakashi asked while giving his trademark one-handed wave. Mokuba Uchiha stepped forward. Like hell, traitor. We are Konoha shinobi. Shinan. Run back to the next fort and inform them. He never got to finish his sentence as a bolt of lightning burned a hole in his neck and caused the head to roll off the shoulders. The Shinan that he was looking at began running away. That was when a blue flash and a blue blur stopped the Shinan and the remaining 18 shinobi went weak at the knees. The Raikage was eliminating their escape route. None of them were foolish enough to believe that they could survive a fight against such a man. I am not without mercy, and I don't detect any more Uchiha here. If you lay down your arms and surrender, you will be treated fairly under the international laws of warfare. If you refuse, you die. Naruto growled menacingly with his tails flipping around lazily behind him. Aoba, being the ranking officer, dropped his kunai which caused the others to follow suit. We surrender. Naruto created 18 clones to lock up the prisoner's chakra, apply paralysis seals and then seal them into 18 scrolls. Fuinjutsu was just fucking awesome like that, as were shadow clones. What would normally take an hour took the blonde Raikage less than 5 minutes. He pocketed the stasis scrolls and let out a high-pitched whistle. Virginia landed with Georgia following moments later. Naruto, you should know that those plant creatures are everywhere. It is likely that they heard Kakashi's name. I only inform you of this so that you are not caught off guard by such information, Virginia said. Naruto rubbed her beak tenderly. Thanks, Ginny. I could care less at this point. In fact, it would be good to enrage the Hokage and show the decent people remaining in Konoha that we are fair. Who knows, we could get a couple deserters and lower morale. Kakashi rubbed the back of his neck while responding, yeah, it would be nice not having to hide my identity anymore. Yugito grabbed Naruto in a headlock. I was having fun with those, Raikage-sama. She gave him a playful noogie before Naruto rose up to his full height which made him tower over the attractive blonde. Hee hee, sorry Raikage-sama. I wouldn't mind letting Fugaku know that I am plowing his ex-wife while she is pregnant with your child. Naruto facepalmed, Yugi-chan. Yugito shrugged, what? Who cares? I am next once this war is over, and our kids are going to be fucking lucky. Kakashi's visible eye widened, and his mask was pulled down fully by his dislocated jaw as he gaped at Naruto. You did it with Mikoto? Yugito giggled profusely, yup, and I got to watch. You did more than watch. Naruto moaned because Itachi had joined the conversation. Itachi tapped his shoulder and puckered out her lips. Naruto gave her a kiss before she smirked at him, you still owe me for that one. Naruto was damn lucky that his girls were more than willing to share, thanks to how attentive his clones were. Naruto held up his hand in a stop gesture, your mom and Yugito are your debtors for that. Itachi rubbed her belly, they can't give me what I want. Itachi pouted lightly before she jumped onto Naruto and wrapped her legs around him. Despite their best efforts, Itachi still hadn't gotten pregnant. It was a medical mystery with the amount of baby batter that was dumped in her heavenly oven. Naruto smiled into the kiss with Itachi, Chi-chan, we still have to wrap up the assault on the fort. Maybe even go for a bonus round with the reinforcements. How are you all doing on chakra? Kakashi raised his hand, I am at half. I can ride on Georgia and offer ranged support. Yugito cracked her knuckles, I am good to go. Itachi finished her kiss with Naruto, you stole my kill. I am good to go. How is Mabui? She will be fine. You know how it feels when foreign lightning gets into your system, Naruto said calmly despite his protective instincts flaring. Let's go, Yugito shouted with a bloodthirsty grin on her face. Tabi's all riled up and I want to wrap this up. Konoha Council, 6 weeks into the war, Fugaku was growling at the latest status updates. He never thought that Konoha would be so inept when it came to waging war. Of course, he had properly pissed off most of the world, but they were ceding territory far too quickly. They had lost nearly half of Wind Country, which he didn't really care about. Kumo had pushed 10 miles into the northern border, and they were still unable to crack Wave's defenses. He may consider himself a god, but that didn't mean he could fight every battle at once. The loss of the Three Tails will set us back greatly. Black Zetsu said in a growl. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Fugaku growled back. Danzo frowned at the interaction, the Root are holding the Kumo forces at bay. The Raikage hasn't appeared since the initial battle. The fact that Hidan, Kakuzu and Adate were taken out in one battle was a huge blow. We spread our strongest forces too thin and the Raikage capitalized on it. Fugaku nodded while frowning, we will keep the remaining Jinchuriki together with Kisame. The question becomes where to use them and how to use the new Zetsu army. Their countermeasures for Zetsu on fixed locations makes them less than useful. I say that we have the Zetsu tunnel within Lightning Country and divide their attention. I still believe Wave is the most important linchpin. We could launch an all-out attack on Wave to get a footing within the elemental ocean. Danzo offered. Meanwhile, my route will conduct guerrilla warfare against the Iwa forces to halt their advance. We use the samurai and shinobi forces to counter Ame and Kumo. So far, they have proved unwilling to slaughter vast numbers. Fugaku growled and nodded. I think I need to get involved. If they are going to resist, then they need to learn to fear a god. Where should I go? Black Zetsu offered his opinion. Hanzo the Salamander is a legend, and he is the key leader for Ame. If they lose him, then that will alleviate the pressure from the northwest. Fugaku got a bloodthirsty grin on his face. I have mastered the Rinnegan. Danzo, use your route in Wind Country. Zetsu, can you tunnel me into Ame? Black Zetsu frowned. They will know we are there as soon as we surface. The rain detects foreign chakra signatures all throughout the nation. Fugaku waved him off. I just need you to get me in and extract me. I want to test my new Rinnegan powers. Danzo nodded. Hit and run. Why not do that against Kumo? Zetsu answered in a pout. The seals along their border prevent any tunneling. I have not been able to get my clones in ever since they analyzed the clones I sent to Kiri. Fugaku grimaced at that. We counted on the Zetsu clones being able to inflict more damage than they have. Their impact has been minimal. I told you the risk of picking a fight against a seal master. Black Zetsu chided. Whatever, let's go deal with the sniveling fools on the council. Fugaku ended the only tactical discussion he cared about. The council meeting was a chaotic mess of bitching and groaning. Luckily for Fugaku, the Uchiha had an iron grip over Konoha now. He didn't need to care what any of them said. He was a true military dictator in times of war, and he easily dismissed their bitching and moaning. It also helped that he had stationed most of his dissenters on the front lines under the command of the Uchiha. It made the meetings far more tolerable that way. The battle for Wave, unlike Fugaku's intelligence network, Naruto now had a string of dissenters promised amnesty should they provide intelligence to him. Aoba was the first dissenter, then Kuza Akimichi, then Asuma Sarutobi. Asuma offered his allegiance and only asked that the Sarutobi clan be spared Naruto's wrath. After hearing about the treatment of the Sarutobi by the Uchiha, Naruto easily agreed to that. Long story short, crows, eagles and dissenters using communication scrolls made Naruto's intelligence nearly absolute. Things were going well on all battlefronts. The only one to truly stall out was Ame, but that was only because that was the plan. The terrain between Ame and Fire Country made it difficult to advance the battlefield. Even the salamander summons had difficulty penetrating the mile of no man's land that was saturated with traps. Thus, Hanzo was content to stall things out and let the other fronts advance. The greatest gains were made along Kumo's border. The air attacks by eagles and crows were supremely effective for the first month, but every fort now had a multitude of anti-air ballista. Naruto didn't want to needlessly risk his clan. The eagles were family and Naruto had already talked to Marika about it. The eagles were // and always will be warriors, but Naruto didn't need them winning his war for him. So, eagles were being withdrawn from airborne assaults and they were providing scouting reports and transportation of key members. Naruto's plan was to use Yugito and Gaara to launch debilitating attacks with the biju to crack the fort's defenses. However, those plans had to be delayed in light of new intelligence. The massive swell of troops towards Wave Country demanded his attention and he was meeting the shift in troop movements piece for piece. He was also going to join in this battle. Wave counted as a home of his and he loved the people of Wave. Thus, if Fugaku wanted a decisive battle, then Naruto would give him a crippling defeat. The best part about controlling the elemental ocean was the ease with which troops could be moved. Marine travel was far quicker than travel by foot, especially when samurai were being moved. Thus, Naruto was easily able to deploy forces to counter Konoha and he was truly going to make this a battle to remember. His Hanyu blood prevented him from feeling too sorry for the vast quantity of lives that would be snuffed out. The only thing that mattered was Naruto's precious people, which now that he was Raikage, was every shinobi and ally of Kumo. What is the plan, Raikage-sama? Yugito asked on behalf of all those listening. Naruto stood and let loose a truly feral smirk. I think their camp is in for a truly stormy night. Their defenses are composed of 3 main forts that are all within 5 miles of the bridge. Their bases are not big enough to house the number of troops he has stationed there, much less the influx of troops. I am going to let loose. Truly let loose. If the fool believes himself a god, then I will show him how mortal he is. Sochi. Kushina whined, I don't want that on your conscience. Naruto looked around the room after acknowledging his mother's statement. Let me make this clear. Everyone I love is in this room. My blood, sweat, tears, heart and soul are connected to each of you. For you, I would do anything. I am still very much human, but I would do anything with the power I have for the ones I love. If I can spare the lives of my men, then shouldn't I do so? If I can shoulder the hate and grief that will linger in Hai no Kuni, then shouldn't I do so? Naruto paused here and took a breath. Would me doing this make you love me any less? No. Was the emphatic response from those attending the meeting, which was echoed by Hikari within the mindscape. My father fought all out and killed 1,000 men and women that each had families. The third Raikage fought against 10,000 men and killed a great many of them for Kumo. Do you see them as criminals or love them for their sacrifices? Naruto asked passionately. We love them, and we love you, Raikage-sama, Mabui said on behalf of the room. Hey, yo, little bro. You know I got your back, for you to hell and back, there ain't a thing I wouldn't do, because Raikage-sama, I love you, B said, and for once his raps earned cheers from everyone. Kushina nodded with a sad smile, I just want you to be happy, Sochi. Naruto beamed a smile and wrapped the Yozukage, his mother, in a hug. You all are my happiness. Just be ready to clean up. Kushina nodded sadly, we will be ready. Naruto got serious once more, B, I am giving you the Eastern Fort. Rado said that he would proudly carry you, but he cautioned that he cannot carry your transformed state. Yugito and Gaara, Georgia said she is your girl and offered the same warning. Each of you are to hit and run. Just take out the walls and shake them up. Your job is not to end the fight, but simply start it. Gaara bowed, yes, Raikage-sama. Kushina beamed a smile, I don't mean to interrupt, but to motive your partners. Well, we got word back from Makai. The dimensional separation is failing. Isabu has joined the resistance against the orcs and Minotaur, and they are holding steady. Let's just wrap this up in a bloody bow. Naruto nodded, thanks for the update. In time, the demonic clans will make for good allies. For now, we cannot count on their support due to the intensity of their own war. One step at a time. Suppose time of attack is in 3 days. That means 2 nights from now we will strike first. For all handlers of dissenters, tell them to get the hell out of Dodge on that night. Yes, Raikage-sama. The room chorused. Kushina walked up to Naruto after the meeting and embraced him in a hug. Your father says he is proud of you, Sochi. Also, he is so cute as a kitsune. He can't transform yet, but he is so cute. She finished in a girly squeal. Naruto patted his mother's head, good to know, Kachan. I sent him the pictures of our grandchildren with Kitsumbi. Sumbi said that Minato cried for hours. I can't wait for the rest of them to pop out. Naruto chuckled, how is Rias doing after the birth? Will she forgive me for only sending a shadow clone? Kushina nodded, baby Lena is so cute. Just like her mama. She has your whisker marks as well. Hikari formed next to Naruto and hugged Kushina, yes, well, I am pleased with our family. It has gotten a little out of hand, but he still has a way to go to best King Solomon. Naruto blushed abashedly, Richan. Kushina shrugged it off, I am the happiest grandma ever. Plus, I get all of my best friends as part of the family. Could King Solomon keep all of his wives so happy? Hikari blushed this time, no, he could not. Your son is just that special. By the way, Ruto, if you encounter another Jinchuriki there is a good chance that you could finish off your 6th tail. The chakra chains drain the yokai astoundingly fast and that pathetic Uchiha provided about a third of your 6th tail. Isabu said it was a fair price to pay for his freedom too. Naruto beamed a smile at that, then let's go hunt them down. You said with 6 tails that you could be freed permanently. Hikari shook her head, it would lay you out for weeks, Ruto. I want my freedom, but I can wait a little bit more. Plus, I have grown rather attached to our soul link. I want to keep pushing our synchronization and see how far it will go. You are almost 3/4 demon now and that means that we could be together forever. Naruto paused at the new release of information, why have I turned more demonic? Why is this the first I'm hearing about it? Hikari frowned at the subdued response, well, I just figured it out. The why is likely because of the amount of yokai you are harboring. The potency of the chakra has integrated into your system. Why are you not happy about this?
Naruto fought back tears at the thought, I have grown so attached to all of my girls.
I don't know if I would want to live forever without them. Hikari bonked Naruto on the head, did you forget what I did to your father? With the dimensional barrier weakening, it will be even easier for me to do that. It is a costly procedure, but I will do it for you, Ruto. So, don't think like that, okay? Naruto nodded weakly and hugged Hikari. You know, I barely even felt the drain from you manifesting this time. Hikari nodded into the hug, you are so much stronger than I ever thought you would become. I am so proud to be your mate, Ruto. I love you so much and that love extends to each one of my sisters. We will find a way, my love, Just like we always do. Kushina joined the hug, I will be with you all the way as well, Sochi. The next day, Naruto flashed to Wave Country. The citizens were all evacuated to Uzushio at the start of the war. They readily agreed to it, which made turning Wave into a true military outpost easier. The ports were full of military ships from Kumo, Kiri, Uzu, and even a couple ships had Iwa and Ame banners. It was proof of the international cooperation occurring. As Naruto arrived, murmurs spread rapidly through the island, and soon the command headquarters was surrounded by off-duty shinobi and kunoichi that wanted to catch a glimpse of their rakiage. Naruto walked out onto the balcony to address his troops while flanked by the divine bolts. He didn't have a speech planned, but he figured he may as well inspire his forces. After silence settled over the island, Naruto projected his voice with chakra and began his impromptu address. Hello everyone, ain't this a beautiful sight? I see Kumo, Uzu, Kiri, Ame, and even some Iwa here. That was what I wanted to see. Our alliance is a blessing, and our just war is our righteous cause. Naruto stopped as chanting began, and overwhelming positivity flooded the area. Once it calmed down, he continued, this impending battle will be a decisive moment in this war. Once we break through this border, the death bell begins tolling for Konoha. I will say the same thing I said at the beginning of the war. Our enemies are the shinobi, samurai, and corrupt politicians of Hai no Kuni. We will not sink to their level, we will not rape and pillage, we will not burn and destroy needlessly. We will prove to every citizen of Hai no Kuni that we are the better men. Tonight, I will lead the charge. Tonight, we will cripple their forces and break their will. Use this time to harden your resolve and sharpen your weapons. Look to the men and women all around you. They are who you fight for. They are who you live for. I do not ask you to die for my cause. I implore you to fight, live, and protect those around you. Prepare yourselves and know that I cherish each of you and the sacrifices you have made for our countries. The following 30 minutes was full of raucous cheers that shook the island. He hoped the barriers would be able to hold and mute all the increased activity. That being said, even Fuinjutsu had its limitations. As the day dragged on, the tension grew as men and women prepared themselves for combat. It hung in the air like a fart in an unventilated room. It settled over everyone as they dealt with the possibility of their own deaths and the gruesome images to come. By 8 p.m., ships were loaded silently, and they prepared their angles of attack for the assault. The bridge contained shinobi that were lined up shoulder to shoulder in preparation for the battle march once the signal was given. The reinforcements remained in a quiet formation behind the bridge. An unsettled quiet hung over the island once the sun set. Naruto walked out of the command headquarters with Gaara, Yugito, and B. They each had their assigned tasks, and they had each hardened their resolve. Virginia, Georgia, and Rado were already waiting for them outside the building. Naruto gave each of them hugs and words of encouragement. Samui and Mabui mounted Virginia with Naruto. Kankuro, Tamari, and Itachi joined Gaara and Yugito on Georgia. B hopped on top of Rado with C, Anko, and Tuya. Each of the support riders would continue airborne operations once the defenses crumbled. The hard hitters would dismount and launch the opening assault while the support covered the retreat with a variety of tags that were attached to kunai. Once atop Virginia, Naruto gave the final nod to Kushina, who was holding down the HQ and controlling the battlefield. As the three eagles took to the air, shinobi around the island closed their eyes and offered up their prayers. The eagles climbed high to start with. Naruto needed sage mode and he was going to use the power of the storms. After circling the island a couple times, Georgia and Rado broke off for their assigned bases. Thunder began rumbling as storm clouds formed behind Naruto. The night sky darkened as the clouds blackened and lightning flashed erratically through the clouds. Naruto held the rain back as long as he flew over Wave, but he would not restrain the storms for his enemies. Might Guy originally volunteered to remain behind in Konoha to take Kakashi's place as the inside man. Everybody underestimated him because they couldn't see past his mask. That being said, Guy had pulled Lee, Neji, and Tenten out of the camp for a patrol. Lee was already committed to departing from the unyouthful Konoha. Tenten was ready to do the same, but she wouldn't leave without her father that was stuck serving as a blacksmith for the Uchiha. Neji was obstinate and unlikely to go along with the plan, but Guy didn't want to see him die. Guy knew the impending battle would be a terrible one and he didn't want any of his precious students to get caught up in it. The patrol took Team Guy down towards a port town that was struggling due to the prolonged embargo. A deep rumble of thunder that followed a flash of lightning drew Guy's attention to the west. He knew what that meant, and he stopped to watch the light show. Guy and his students would remain fixed in place as they watched the terrifying display of natural power that ensued. Naruto synchronized with Hikari while in sage mode and his control over the storm intensified as his potent yokai spread out among the clouds. Virginia, as a sage in training, was nearly drunk on the overwhelming amount of natural energy that was hovering around her. The crackle of energy in the air was intoxicating to her, but the pat on her neck from her summoner snapped her out of it. She dove from over a mile in the air as Naruto shaped the natural energy with the dive. This was the first time they were going to use the most devastating jutsu in the eagle's arsenal. Naruto clapped his hands together and eyes closed as the winds roared around him. He loved the feeling of terminal velocity as Virginia dove. He sheltered his girls in a wind barrier and used his control over the storm to form it around him. The eagle with a 200-meter wingspan made of wind and lightning formed around him easily. The 10 smaller eagles that dove behind him pushed his concentration to the max. As they broke through the low-hanging cumulonimbus clouds, the world froze as thousands of eyes locked onto Sage Art, Wrath of the Screaming Eagles. The wind and lightning chakra looked ethereal as the battle cry of the eagles echoed for miles around. The last 300 meters of the descent was over in mere seconds as Virginia banked out of the dive like a majestic fighter jet. The 11 elemental eagles continued their trajectory as one massive and 11 smaller explosions erased the central fort off the map in a terrifyingly majestic display of power. The explosion of light, chakra, electricity and wind rose nearly 150 meters into the air. The explosions blossomed together and formed into a dome of blinding chakra light that sent a mushroom cloud up into the cloud cover. As if the heavens wanted to honor the fearsome display, sheets of rain began pouring down and lightning flashed all over the area. Thunder echoed like a battle drum, and everything happened at once. 3 Bijudama impacted 2 forts as 3 perfect Jinchuriki wielded their deadly power with practiced ease. Shukaku and Matatabi were determined not to be outdone by Naruto while B was just letting Juki cut loose a bit. The eastern and western forts, already stunned by the storm and majestic explosion, erupted in twin explosions as Bijudama crashed into their outer walls. The twin explosions were the go signal for the marine forces that jumped out of their ships and used water walking to make their landings. Naruto recovered from the dive and Virginia made her way to the main encampment of the reinforcements. Naruto felt the full transformations as Biju yokai saturated the landscape and called out to his sage mode. Moments later, the Bijudama erupted and proved that things were going according to plan. With that, Naruto focused on the task at hand. Once again, Virginia climbed into the air, but this was going to be a controlled dive that would let Naruto use one of the jutsu he had been saving. As the controlled dive began, Naruto channeled chakra throughout his body and tails. His tails began glowing as tempest chakra began forming in each of them. Naruto kept his hands clasped together to focus this jutsu after he went through the hand signs. His tails began glowing brighter and he brought them up over his head as the tempest chakra formed into a ball over his head. Naruto's eyes snapped open as the dive got him into range and Virginia let out a menacing shriek that told Naruto it was time to let loose. The ball of chakra turned into a supercharged beam that was nearly 10 meters in diameter. The laser of Tempest chakra tore a destructive line from the front gate through the center of the encampment. As the Tempest beam made contact with the ground, the chakra dispersed in an explosion rather than digging into the earth. The chakra blossomed into a series of devastating explosions that ripped a destructive line through the encampment as Virginia leveled out and flew over the camp. Mabui and Samui each had clones that were helping them to throw out explosive tags. The smaller explosions that erupted on either side of the destructive trench sowed further death and chaos on the gathering of samurai and shinobi. After the first swipe, Virginia banked and circled around for another run at the camp. Naruto calmed his chakra and prepared himself for his next roll during the next couple runs while his girls rained death down on the encampment. Ruto, you are good to go. Your reinforcements are 10 to 15 minutes out. The signatures you feel are 3 of the remaining Jinchuriki and the big one must be Kisame, Hikari said as she was fully synced with Naruto's senses. Naruto frowned. That was more than I was expecting. Hikari agreed, there is no need to put yourself in such a position without backup. Why not retrieve B, Gaara, and Yugito? That would more than enough to even the odds. Naruto agreed with that and let his girls know that he would be right back. The 3 Jinchuriki didn't even question things when Naruto showed up amidst the sheets of rain and stormy skies in a blue flash. They each flashed with him back atop Virginia as she was pulling out of another run. Ginny, that is enough. They are starting to form up and it seems like they have a plan for the Eagles now. Drop us in back of the camp and we will go on foot from there. Sammy and Mabui, stay with Ginny. The high altitude tags will work until reinforcements arrive. You 3, on me. Yes, Reikage-sama. The chorused. B, I have you against Kisame. Be wary of Seimata and you should be fine. Gaara, I want you on crowd control. I know it is harder to control your sand in the storms, but I have faith in you. Yugito, you are with me on the Jinchuriki. Sasuke was scowling at the current state of affairs. His father was smart not to put him and his men within the forts. He could already tell that the forts were a lost cause. Nothing could survive those explosions. In fact, Sasuke was pretty damned intimidated by the man he used to consider a rival. Naruto Uzumaki was always a source of motivation when Sasuke was training. Despite that, Sasuke knew that he could not stand against the man. That was why he was surrounded by the strongest shinobi in Konoha. Sasuke activated the loyalty seals on each of his compatriots. He wasn't going to take a chance of them chickening out of this fight. If they lost this fight, then the war was as good as lost. He already ordered Zetsu to bring the creatures here to reinforce the camp. He just needed to rally the camp and begin the assault on Wave prematurely. His father should have known better than just leaving forts and encampments for the Raikage to pick off. Everyone is to stay on me. We will find their forces and eliminate them. Unseal the ballista scrolls and get them set up. A samurai general ran over to Sasuke's group. There are 1,000 of shinobi pouring off the bridge and multiple ships. They are moving, my lord, he said as he bowed to Sasuke. Sasuke grunted, gather our remaining forces and prepare them to engage. We should still outnumber them 3-1. They are just using scare tactics. The rain pelted Sasuke's face and those in his group flinched as lightning flashed all around them. Through the storm, Sasuke's EMS flared and spun wildly. This was more than enough to make the samurai general move out. Kisame hitched Seimata over his shoulder. Well, I joined y'all for the chance for a good fight. Looks like we got that chance. 4 thuds sounded above the rain and caused the group of Uchiha Jinchuriki and Kisame to turn around. Sasuke instantly scowled when he saw who was in front of him. The Raikage and Hachibi Jinchuriki towered over the other two in the group. Their massive frames illuminated by the non-stop flashes of lightning that were always accompanied by the menacing rumble of thunder. If it isn't the little, pathetic, insignificant little fuck that I nearly put down in Iwa. Tell me, boy, do you wish to die tonight? Naruto said with his arms crossed in front of his chest. The tension grew as the standoff set in. The nearby explosions of crashes of thunder were enough to make the shinobi flinch. Sasuke scowled as Kisame snickered, I have gotten stronger since then, traitor. I have been itching for a rematch. Naruto waved a hand in front of his chest, nah, you are still as pathetic as the day I severed your hands. Your papa gave you his eyes, that power isn't yours. Your papa also gave you Son Goku and I imagine your eyes borrow his power. Naruto tapped his chin here, yeah, I think you are just a compendium of borrowed power, you pathetic bitch boy. Kisame's snickering was getting out of hand before he was silenced with a hand sign from Sasuke, who was scowling deeply. The red of his Sharingan glowing in the night along with the fires that dotted the encampment. Sasuke growled, says the man that grew up on the Kyuubi's power. Look at you. B started laughing before he broke into a rap, that ain't the power of the Kyuubi, nah, that little lady just let it be, what you see in front of you, is my man Ruto, the Hanyu. Naruto cracked his neck, what he said. Tetsu Uchiha, Jinchuriki of the Rakubi, asked, what did he say? Yugito stepped in and growled at the Uchiha, he said that Raikage-sama earned all of his power. When you killed him, he came back as a Hanyu, and he worked for every ounce of the power he possesses. Unlike your coward of a father in cage. Naruto held up a hand before the Uchiha group could overreact, Sasuke, it seems like you want a rematch. Let's go then, little bitch. Prove to me that you are more than some pathetic amalgamations of borrowed power. This caused everyone to lower into fighting stances. V took out 2 of his katanas while Yugito pushed chakra into the seals on her hands which caused her gauntlets to appear. Naruto just remained standing with his arms crossed and Gaara had uncorked his gourd. 4 Sharingan eyes looked back at them and many genjutsu were shattered effortlessly by Naruto's dense chakra that was beginning to flare up. The standoff was broken by a flash of lightning that crashed into the ground in between the two groups and the Raikage disappeared in a blur. He grabbed Itsuo, the Jinchuriki of the Chomei, and Sasuke, Jinchuriki of Son Goku, by the necks and disappeared in a blur. Rather than move out of the camp, Naruto directed his momentum to the center of the camp. He jumped in the air with each Jinchuriki caught in a double lightning lariat. He spun wildly and tossed the 2 Uchiha encased in stage 1 biju cloaks down into the center of the camp. The explosion of mud, dirt and earth in the center of the camp was soon followed by one of Naruto's jutsu projects. Ever since recovering his father's scroll, he was determined to incorporate each of his elements into his father's creation. The Rasen Shuriken hummed to life in a screech of wind in his right hand and he hurled the jutsu down towards the newest crater. The blue sphere that was encased in a white layer of wind chakra and had 3 rotating wind blades on it tore through the storm towards their targets. Itsuo and Sasuke were able to recover in time and their Sharingan picked up the hyper-dense ball of chakra coming at them. Sasuke and Itsuo substituted with two samurai that were out of range and their Sharingan saw the two sacrifices get shredded by millions of wind blades. Sasuke pulled on more of Son Goku's chakra and attempted to catch Naruto in midair with an arrow composed of the purely black flames of Amaterasu. His EMS ability was called Flame Control and it allowed the Uchiha to shape and control the heavenly flames with his right eye. The arrow of black flames tore through the air with the frightening accuracy of the Sharingan and its predictive abilities. Naruto saw that the arrow was headed for him, and he simply pushed off the air with the cloud stepping technique to avoid the devastating attack. He dodged multiple volleys of kunai and shuriken in the same way as he repeatedly stepped off the air to dodge and descend down faster than normal gravity would allow. Sasuke unsheathed his katana and encased it in lightning as the fight turned to point-blank range. His Sharingan able to track the speed of his lightning-cloaked opponent. Naruto's foot touched the soaked ground once and he pushed off in an explosion of speed. Naruto's right hand unsheathed the katana as he blurred past Sasuke. To his surprise, the Uchiha was able to block 4 of the 5 nearly instantaneous strikes. That didn't stop the 5th strike from lashing across his back. The chakra cloak was nearly enough to stop the chakra-encased blade, but it wasn't sufficient to totally negate it. Sasuke would bear the scar on his back for the rest of his short life. Naruto turned on a dime and avoided a fireball from Itsuo. The Jinchuriki of the Nanabi then sent multiple fireballs at the rakeage that was blurring in between them with minimal effort. Naruto wanted to deal with this Uchiha before Son Goku's chakra healed Sasuke. He pivoted 45 degrees from his latest dodge and sent a kunai right at the head of the Uchiha. Itsuo was able to track the insanely fast projectile, thanks to his Sharingan. He dodged his head to the right and watched as the kunai sailed past. After committing the most fatal mistake against a user of the flying Raijin, Itsuo immediately regretted it. The flashes of lightning had illuminated the night sky, but the flash of dark blue light that originated from right behind Itsuo was different. Unfortunately for the newly made Jinchuriki, his body couldn't move fast enough. 4 chains sheathed in Tempest Chakra ate through the stage 1 cloak in mere seconds. The tips of the chains burrowed through the Uchiha's palms and snaked up to pierce through each shoulder. The 2 other chains pierced through the abdomen where the seal resided to disrupt the connection between Jinchuriki and biju. Naruto discontinued the Tempest Chakra to the chains and simply reveled in the amount of chakra and yokai he was absorbing. In total, it was less than a third of his own chakra, but that was still a nice top-off after the amount of chakra he had flung around this night. The chains glowed red as the yokai of the Nanabi topped off Naruto's reserves and even added to them. Naruto was forced to dodge 3 oversized arrows made of black flame as the Uchiha Saiyan was back on his feet with 4 tails waving behind him. Naruto formed a clone and passed off the unconscious body of Itsuo. This was the battle he wanted. This was the revenge he wanted. That was the opponent he wanted to crush. Hikari couldn't agree more, and she opened the valve to the soul link and pushed more of her potent yokai through it. Once again, Naruto's Hanyu features flared up and the Tempest Shroud erupted around him. The glowing, deep blue eyes glared through the rain and wind and pierced Sasuke's soul. Despite the influence of Son Goku's yokai and the hatred granted to him by the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Sasuke's heart was seized by fear. He couldn't stand up to this power. Sure enough, moments later, Sasuke was only saved by instinct as a purple ribcage formed subconsciously in front of him and shattered milliseconds later as the right fist adorning 3 golden bracelets sent him flying backwards. Sasuke tumbled off the ground once before he cried out in pain as a combat boot crashed into the base of his spine. The abrupt change in momentum gave the Uchiha whiplash as he was kicked around like a kid's kickball at recess. The devastating series of jarring kicks threatened to plunge the Uchiha into unconsciousness, but he was finally able to right himself and dodge an axe kick from Naruto. Fear seized his heart while debilitating pain racked his body as a result of the repeated crushing blows. After dodging the kick, Sasuke attempted to create distance, but it was useless against the fastest man in the world. Naruto caught Sasuke around the waist and flipped a couple times in air before kicking off the air and propelling Sasuke and himself into the ground. Naruto was proud to use his own version of Ai's Liger Bomb drop. The results were devastating as the crater extended 150 meters from the point of impact and buried the Uchiha nearly 50 meters below what used to be ground level. Sasuke whimpered in pain and formed a hand sign. Naruto watched him and thought nothing of it. He wanted to get Son Goku out of this evil man. He wanted to send a message to Fugaku. Naruto started by pinning Sasuke's back to the bottom of the crater as 4 chains pierced his shoulders and hips. While they were draining chakra, Naruto smirked down at the pathetic Uchiha. He slowly unsheathed his katana while locking eyes with the broken Uchiha Saiyan. "You know, Sasuke. I took these from you once already, but I think I will learn my lesson. Naruto growled as his Hanyu instincts were getting the better of him. Sasuke's eyes widened in fear as the katana dug into his right wrist. After a couple seconds, a burst of wind chakra severed the wrist in a spray of blood. Sasuke cried out in pain as his eyes tried to reactivate the Sharingan, but the chakra-draining effects of the chains prohibited it. Naruto smirked devilishly down at the whimpering Uchiha and the pointy edge of his katana hovered millimeters over Sasuke's left eye. The Uchiha turned his head away, but a chakra chain formed out of Naruto's back and forced Sasuke's head to face him. The Uchiha closed his eyes in an attempt to protect his Sharingan. Blood trickled out of his mouth as the katana sank down into the eye socket and robbed the Uchiha Saiyan of his left Sharingan eye. His cry of pain was interrupted as Naruto was caught off guard by a sword that felt more like a club. The sword dug into Naruto's abdomen and sent him flying away from the downed Uchiha. 5 chakra chains flailed wildly behind him as his momentum sent him tumbling up the edge of the crater. Kisame stood protectively over the Uchiha as a plant creature emerged from the ground. Black Zetsu made the immediate decision to wrap itself around Sasuke before it disappeared into the ground. That whole process took less than 10 seconds, in which time B appeared in a tornado of flashing katanas as he used his Akurabeto Kenjutsu style to put Kisame on the defensive. B blurred in and out on the attack as he used 8 high-quality katanas simultaneously to keep the pressure on Kisame. The many shallow wounds on Kisame's body served as proof that B's attacks were landing. Naruto pulled himself out of the crater and channeled Hikari's yokai to heal the gash on Naruto's torso. The chakra-draining effects of the sword sapped a portion of his chakra while wounding him, but it was nothing he couldn't shake off. Rather than throw himself into the fight against Kisame, Naruto looked around the edge of the crater to see hundreds of angered shinobi and samurai. As if him standing up was the signal to charge, the samurai and shinobi let out a war cry and charged down the edges of the crater. Naruto sighed and knew that B was fully immersed in his fight against Kisame. Thus, he formed 20 shadow clones to form a defense perimeter around B and Kisame's fight before he blurred into motion. Naruto was able to reel in his bloodlust and he decided that enough people had died today. He unsealed 2 greatsword-sized buken, wooden training swords, that were reinforced with seals before he engaged the shinobi. The following 10 minutes were filled with rumbling thunder, flashes of lightning, torrents of rain, blue blurs and screams of injured men. Despite the dull nature of the buken, they still weighed nearly 50 pounds apiece and such weight shattered whatever it encountered when it was moving at such high speeds. The shattering of bones cracked through the air louder than the thunder and each crack was followed by a bone-chilling scream of one of the victims. Naruto was halfway through the forces that surrounded the crater when his own shinobi forces arrived. The battle screeched to a halt as the remaining forces in the camp realized that they were completely defeated. It was mere moments after the battlefield froze that the samurai bugle sounded the surrender. The Konoha shinobi hesitated, but as the clattering of hundreds, if not thousands, of katana rang out through the stormy skies, the shinobi realized what was going on. Katanas were followed by kunai, shuriken and many other steely instruments of war. Naruto whistled and Virginia landed amongst the crumpled forms of shinobi and samurai within the crater. Naruto hopped on her back, and she hovered into the sky. He used his connection to the storm to silence it and the rain ended abruptly, followed by the thunder and lightning. A disturbing calm encompassed the decimated encampment. Naruto used his chakra to project his voice. Shinobi and samurai of Hai no Kuni, if you drop your arms and cease your resistance, you will be treated humanely as prisoners of Kumagakure under the international laws of warfare. Enough blood has been spilt and far too many souls have been sent to the Shinigami on this night. Let this be the end of this battle. A battle cry from the Allied forces rocked the night air as loud as any of the thunderclaps that had accompanied the devastating storm. The night ended with 2,200 prisoners of war taken. It would later be determined that thousands of shinobi and samurai lost their lives on this night. It was the single bloodiest night of battle in shinobi history with 4,800 lives lost, 4,400 of which were on Hai no Kuni's side. The nearly 400 Allied casualties were honored by the Raikage himself presiding over the international funeral. The heroes' cemetery in Wave Country would later be visited by shinobi of all nations to pay respects to the lives lost in the most decisive battle of shinobi history. The night also removed 2 of Fugaku's Jinchuriki while Sasuke and Tetsu were able to flee. That just left Son Goku and Seiken out of Naruto's control. Kisame Hoshigaki and his fellow sword Seimato were also conquered on this night, which removed the last missing nin that composed the Akatsuki. It was a crippling blow that would break the will of the alliance in short time. Omega Corps, morning after Battle of Wave, Amy, Daru and a full division of shinobi were pulled from the front lines to respond to the urgent request for reinforcements from Omega Corps. They traveled through the night after the emergency reinforcement request reached them. None of them were ready for what they encountered after they traveled across the lake to get to the capital city of Amigacore. Smoke was still billowing into the sky and fires yet burned as the ships landed at the destroyed port harbors on the edges of the island. Amigacore no Sato was an industrialized village that specialized in the processing of iron and steel. The city boasted far more industrial capabilities than most of the 5 great nations, and this was where Ame found its success. However, the buildings that had previously reached tens of stories into the sky were now crumbled messes of shattered stone. The once great city looked like it was rocked by a great explosion that originated from its center. The crater at the center of the city radiated outwards all the way to the edge of the island in the middle of the lake. Amy ran through the shattered cityscape and jumped over the piles of rubble as she made her way to the Hattori compound. Tears filled her eyes as she ran past groups of shinobi attempting to excavate citizens and shinobi that were buried and trapped in the rubble. Wails escaped her mouth as she approached the destroyed walls that surrounded her family's compound. She fell to her knees in tears when she saw the sobbing form of her mother sitting on a pile of rubble. She looked around and couldn't see her father anywhere, she couldn't feel her father's chakra anywhere, and the thought filled her with fear. Amy picked herself off her knees and dashed to her mother. Mother and daughter wrapped themselves in each other's embrace as tears poured freely out of their ducts. The survivors of the Hattori clan surrounded the heads of their clan, and the scene garnered the attention of some of the surrounding shinobi. Amy was so overwhelmed by her emotions that she didn't process the blue flash of light, and it wasn't until she felt the warm embrace of her loving husband that she realized he was there. Naruto looked around in amazement and abject horror at the shattered cityscape of his allied village. He forced his emotions down and stowed them away for later processing so that he could be there to support his wife. She desperately needed him now more than ever. Naruto continued to envelop his wife and mother-in-law in a tender embrace as he looked around for a commanding officer. Sure enough, Konan appeared in a flutter of paper sheets and gave him a solemn look. Naruto left the mother and daughter to their mourning to get briefed on what happened. Konan bowed her head to Naruto. "Thank you for responding so quickly, Raikage-sama. Please come with me to the command tent and we will provide a full report." Naruto nodded and followed along. He paused briefly to create nearly 1,000 shadow clones to aid in recovery of the trapped and wounded. Konan simply offered him a soft, grateful smile before she continued her walk towards the command tent. Upon entering the tent, Naruto saw that Yahiko and Nagato were laid up in bed, and it appeared like the two suffered some broken bones and other injuries during the attack. Konan came to a stop next to their beds and Daru appeared silently behind Naruto. "Good to see you two will be okay." Naruto began, "Where is Hanzo and what happened here?" Yahiko frowned when Hanzo's name was mentioned and Nagato visibly flinched. The Hokage appeared alone within the city along with one of those plant creatures. Our rain sensory field picked up him, but by the time the first shinobi responded he was hovering in air above the city. We felt a significant amassing of chakra which at least allowed those of us experienced enough to put up some defenses. Moments later, a wave of gravity exploded and did most of the damage to the city. Naruto remained in a respectful silence as he listened to the report. He simply gave a nod and said, "Continue." Nagato took over. The damage was astronomical, and everything was in a state of chaos. Despite that, Hanzo-sama engaged the enemy in single combat. He fought the Hokage alone for 15 minutes before we were able to join the fight. It appears like the initial jutsu caused a backlash because the Hokage did not use gravity again for a full 20 minutes after the initial attack. Despite that, the Hokage fought off Hanzo and crippled him. That was when we engaged in the fight. The Hokage summoned multiple different animal summons that began wreaking havoc and Konan handled those. We fought against the man but realized quickly that he could absorb chakra, he could alter his body, and he had some power that incapacitated our shinobi by just touching them. Yahiko picked up here. After fighting Fugaku for a couple minutes, Fugaku got his gravitational powers back. He just held out his hand and Hanzo was pulled to him.
What happened next? I don't know how to say it.
It was like he ripped Hanzo-sama's soul out. Hikari chimed in here through the link. That is the power of the human path, and that is bad. That allowed Fugaku to get access to all of Hanzo's memories, which means he knows everything Hanzo knew. Naruto frowned up hearing that, but he relayed it to the group. The revelation made them pale, and it simultaneously enraged them. Naruto held up his hand and did his best to contain his anger. Despite his best efforts, a deep blue aura began surging from Naruto. "I believe the time for pleasantries and kitty gloves is past. I will go directly to Konoha and take the fight to Fugaku. What I saw outside cannot be tolerated. What I saw outside is beyond a war crime. I will destroy Fugaku, the Uchiha clan and Konoha. It is time for this to end." Nagato took over. "Naruto, please don't. The power of the Rinnegan is truly terrible. If you fought against it in a fair fight, I believe you could win. However, if you fight alone and behind enemy lines, then it could cost you your life. Naruto took a deep breath as he sensed the genuine concern among his friends. Fine. I have news from Wave. We have eliminated the obstacles in our way. We have full access to Northern Fire Country. We will rally, get Ame help, and then we will press. The time for defensive operations has passed. We have captured 3 of their Jinchuriki and removed the Akatsuki from the board. I will issue a demand for a final surrender, and if they disregard that, then I will decimate the Hidden Leaf Village. That seems fair, Konan said simply as she sat down in between her 2 lovers and took each of their hands. I would ask you to wait so that we could be part of that offensive. Naruto frowned at that. I don't know about that. If Fugaku is going to resort to these tactics, then waiting could cost us thousands of lives. After he learns about the defeat in Wave, he will get even more desperate. Hokage's office, morning after attack on Ame, Fugaku had been in a great mood as he was transported back to Konoha by Black Zetsu. He had killed a living legend in the shinobi world and devastated his village single-handedly. On top of that, he got the overwhelmingly vast knowledge of Hanzo Hattori. He could watch the legend's memories as if they were his own. He could see the troop layouts, battle plans and phase plans for the war. With this knowledge, he would be able to crush his opponents. That was when Fugaku returned to the Hokage's office. That was when his glorious plans began crumbling down around him. Zetsu provided reports of the nearly complete defeat of his forces. Zetsu reported the storm that wiped out almost a third of his army. Zetsu reported the crippling of his son and loss of Kisame and 2 Uchiha Jinchuriki. Zetsu reported that the Raikage wielded power comparable to that of the gods. Fugaku slammed his hands on his desk. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Kami, damn it all. Black Zetsu just watched the temper tantrum with a placid look on his face. Focus, Fugaku. I have felt the loss of the biju as they were sent to the demonic realm. That means that we need to access it in order to retrieve their power. We would have been better off locking them away in the Ghetto Mazo after all. Fugaku growled, we should have given them more time to train, but our plans got ahead of us. How do I access this realm? Black Zetsu nodded, let us go to the Ghetto Mazo. Madara-sama had used it to create a dimensional block. We can remove that and then use the power of the statue to create a portal. I will warn you, the forces there are strong. They are not to be underestimated. With that, Fugaku and Zetsu traveled to the Ghetto Mazo. Fugaku was so set on getting power that he didn't even check in on his son that was in the Konoha hospital. He didn't even leave a clone to calm the panic that was beginning to set in over Konoha. He wasn't there when the Sarutobi clan, Nara clan, Aburame clan and Akimichi clan left in the dead of night. He wouldn't return until 2 days later to find that his village was in a state of panic with Danzo attempting to hold things down with his root by brute force. Uzushiagakure, 1 week after Battle of Wave, Naruto shook out his shoulders as he appeared within the clan compound on the island sheltered by whirlpools. It had been a long week as the weight of the war settled over the allied forces. After the victory in Wave, Iwa forces encountered guerrilla warfare that picked them apart and left them in a bad situation. The desert wasn't a hospitable place, and it was even less so when the water supply was poisoned. Then, of course, was the destruction of Ame. Naruto couldn't leave his allies hanging in their time of need, and he had directed a sizable number of resources and personnel to aid in the recovery of Ame. The death toll and number of injured was staggering and growing daily. Nearly 3,000 shinobi and 20,000 civilians killed in one attack. Over 6,000 shinobi and 35,000 civilians injured. It was a truly devastating loss, and it sent a clear message to the allied forces. Fugaku Uchiha was the true enemy of the world, and he must be dealt with at all costs. Those 2 attacks were bad, but then there was the assault of the Zetsu. Nearly 3,000 plant creatures attacked the southern border of Kumo. The plant creatures were only mid to high tuning level, but they were enough to sow chaos and discord when they appeared in such numbers. Naruto learned that the Kumo suffered 300 deaths and more casualties. It was yet another devastating loss of his precious people. Naruto hated the cost of war, and this motivated him even further to end the chaos. The week was filled with funeral services to honor the dead, and they weighed heavy on the Godime Raikage of Kumo. Naruto shook his shoulders to shake off the imaginary weight of the stress. It wouldn't do for him to sulk in front of his family and mates. They were still alive, and they were the ones that mattered most to him. Thanks for coming, Sochi, Kushina said as she wrapped him in a warm embrace. Naruto felt his walls crumble as he sank into the embrace of his mother's arms. Her warmth penetrated his cold, stoic exterior, and he felt the full weight of the losses suffered this week hit him all at once. His arm tightened around his mother, and he buried his face into the crook of her neck as she rubbed her hands through the base of his ponytail. After a minute, Naruto pulled himself out of his mother's shoulder and greeted Karen and Rias, who had been leading the portal project. With the pleasantries out of the way, Naruto's face hardened as he waited for the report. Karen stepped forward next to the portal device. "We got a message from Minato and Kitsune last night. They reported that Fugaku appeared in one of the battles between the Kitsune, turtles and orcs. He said that Fugaku used the Rinnegan to tip the scales of the fight. Isabu was able to escape, but the fact that Fugaku was present creates a host of problems for us." Naruto groaned and slapped a hand to his face. He dragged it down slowly at the implications of the most recent information. He knew about the portal because of the information he absorbed from Hanzo. The fact that he went to the demonic realm complicates things. Hikari formed to the right of Naruto and embraced him in a hug. "Well, I think it is time for us to return. I want to introduce my six-tailed hubby to the clan." Kushina's head snapped over. "Six? When did that happen? Why am I just now hearing about it?" Naruto sighed and shrugged. Chome was more than happy to top the sixth tail off in return for freeing her from the Genjutsu and Uchiha vessel. She isn't going to be happy about coming back here. Hikari slapped his shoulder playfully. "Uzu is far safer than the demonic realm if Fugaku can access it. We are lucky that Isabu got away after seeing my father's eyes in that cursed man's possession." Naruto nodded with a small smile on his face. "Very well, let's go greet the clan." Makai, Kitsune territory, capital city of Karyu. Naruto, Kushina and Hikari stepped through a portal to Makai to see two Kitsune guards. They were four-tailed Kitsune and they each had two swords on their waist as they stood on their haunches. Their postures were defensive and unyielding, but that all changed when they saw Hikari standing in their presence next to Naruto. "Milady," they said before they bent over and ducked their heads to the floor. Hikari waved them off dismissively. Yes, I have returned. Now, take me to the council so that I may get an update. There is much to be discussed and little time to do it." The red fox rose from his bow. "I am Kitsumiyu. It would be my honor to lead you, milady. May I inquire about the two humans, one human and one Hanyu with you?" Naruto stepped forward with his chest out and spoke in a commanding tone. "I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, six-tailed Kitsune Hanyu and mated partner of Hikari Uzumaki. This is my mother, Uzumaki Kushina, maid of Minato Namikaze." The two guards bowed and prostrated themselves once more. The purple fox spoke this time. "It is an honor to meet you, my lord. I am Kirima and I wish to offer my gratitude to you and your kin." Naruto waved him off. "We have the rest of our lives to catch up. Now, we are fighting a war in two realms and that requires some urgency. Could you please escort us to the council?" Naruto reiterated to break the two guards out of their shock. Kirima opened the door to the outside and Naruto got his first view of the Kitsune village of Karyu. The building was newly constructed, and it was formed into the base of a mountain that overlooked a forest with trees that were bigger than anything Naruto had ever seen. The trees were anywhere from 50 to 300 meters in diameter and wooden ramps and bridges linked massive tree to massive tree. The quaint wooden architecture was homely, and it really fit the whole fox vibe. The trees had holes that were wide enough to fit a fully grown elephant comfortably through the entrances. These holes pocketed each tree and allowed the housing of the Kitsune. Kitsumiyu guided the group to the biggest tree in the center of the village. It was truly massive, nearly 500 meters in diameter, and the tree rose hundreds of meters into the air and it towered over the rest of the forest. Naruto climbed the large wooden ramp that spiraled up the great tree while looking around at the Kitsune that had frozen in place to gawk at the group. He couldn't blame them. It had been nearly 2 centuries since they had seen their queen and leader. The Kitsune were truly unique as they had a variety of fur colors, tails and sizes. The group continued the march to the main council room and the four-tailed guards bowed reverently to Hikari as she passed through the doors that they opened for her. The activity in the council room froze as every fox head turned to the main door as the aura of the Kyuubi flooded the area. It was accompanied by a potent power exuding from Naruto that was fearsome and nearly as strong as Hikari's own. The combined presence demanded attention and it took less than 10 seconds for the Kitsune in the room to form up and bow their heads to their returned queen. "Raise your heads, it is good to see you all again," Hikari said regally before continuing. "Who is in charge and who can get us up to date on the current state of affairs?" A seven-tailed gray fox stepped forward and bowed while on all fours. "It is truly good for this old soul to see you again, milady. I would be more than happy to assist you." Hikari smiled in her Hanyu form. "Kitsumiga, it is good to see you again, old friend. Let us get this dealt with and my mate will go issue a warning to the pigs and cows." A collective gasp sounded through the room and Kitsumiga asked the question on everyone's mind. Mate, milady?" Hikari took Naruto's hand with her right hand and pulled aside her auburn locks to show the mating mark on her collarbone. This is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, six-tailed Kitsune Hanyu and my chosen mate. He is hailed as the Raikage of Kumagakure and has earned the title of Kenshi no Raijin. He has the loyalty of many nations and is the sage of the Honorable Eagle clan of the Summoning Realm. The Kitsune bowed their heads and chorused in unison, "Hail, Lord Naruto." Naruto chuckled sheepishly and waved them off. Enough of that. Let us conduct business and end these senseless wars. I look forward to getting to know each of you in time. Hi, Naruto-sama. The Kitsune chorused before breaking formation and returning to their work. At least, all Kitsune except one returned to their duties. A blonde Kitsune with white tips that mirrored Naruto's Hanyu form remained frozen in place as his slitted, blue eyes locked onto the red-headed beauty standing beside Naruto. The Kitsune flinched when Naruto's electric blue eyes locked onto his own. Moments later, the violet orbs of Kushina locked on as well and tears began falling shortly after. Business was delayed for a family reunion that was long overdue. Naruto thanked Hikari for honoring their agreement. Kushina hurled herself at the blonde three-tailed fox and wept into his neck. Naruto just approached calmly and waited for his mother to have time with his estranged father and her estranged husband. He pulled Hikari into a one-armed hug and the married/mated couple just watched the reunion with smiles on their faces. It was moments like this that made the tortures of war manageable. Kushina grabbed Minato by either side of his snout and planted a kiss on his nose. "Oh, Minato, it is so good to see you again. You need to hurry up and get strong enough to transform like Ruto does," she teased him as she peppered kisses all over his face. Minato chuckled abashedly while he was soaking in the warm presence of his wife. "It is good to see you again, Kushi-chan." Minato nuzzled into her neck once before his gaze locked onto Naruto. "Son, I am so proud of you," he said softly. Naruto stepped forward and ruffled his father's ears, knowing damn well how sensitive the ears are. "Thanks to San. I hear you have been holding it down on this side of things. How is it as a full kitsune?" Minato continued cuddling Kushina as he replied, "It was interesting. Completely new chakra system, new balance, new tactics. You know what stayed the same?" Minato asked with a foxy smirk. "Speed is still king. I trained that up and this body is even faster than my human body." Naruto belted out a laugh at that. "We will have to see who is faster. I'll bet you a tail that I am faster than you." For some reason, this comment made the room freeze. Naruto looked around in confusion until Hikari coughed to get his attention with a disappointed look on her face. "Ruto. A kitsune betting tails is a serious challenge. It would be the equivalent of you placing Kumagakure as a bet." She chastised him. Naruto scratched the back of his neck sheepishly. "Whoops, my bad. I take it back, but we should definitely race." The room around returned to normal motion after a collective breath out. Minato nodded with a pleased smile on his face. "All right, let's go get our war update. If you are able, the turtles are in dire need of help after Fugaku's attack." Naruto nodded and asked Hikari, "What did we estimate the time dilation as? Was it 2.15 to 1? Hikari nodded. "That is the most recent estimation. It is unknown if the dimensional barrier weakening will affect that though." Naruto shrugged. "I handed things off to Daru, Samui and Yugito for a week. Let's clean up as much as we can on this end before we return." Hikari glommed onto Naruto. "I am so blessed by you, my kitsune king." Naruto leaned his head into the embrace. "As I am blessed by you, Haim." The kitsune watched this interaction with fond reminiscence. To see their queen back and returned with a mate that appeared to be worthy made the kitsune yip in approval. The yipping broke the two lovers out of their own little world as they approached a command table that was made of yokai and held the chakra replication of the world on its center. It was a kitsune illusion that allowed them to represent anything the kitsune at the controls envisioned. There was a round of introductions as the kitsune reintroduced themselves to Hikari and each of them added their respects for Naruto. There was a slight bit of ass kissing, but it wasn't anything that Naruto wasn't used to from his own people back in Kumo. Naruto introduced himself and informed the Kitsune Council of his other mates. This slightly derailed the conversation a little bit. Kyuubi, an elder seven-tailed kitsune, spoke first. "My lord, I mean no disrespect, but why do you have so many mates when you are Hikari-sama's chosen?" Naruto chuckled and waved a palm to Hikari, who was blushing profusely. Hikari coughed to clear her throat and got back into her regal mode. "I arranged the mating contract for my mating cycle that is coming in 3 years. As such, I finished his transition to Hanyu when he was still a kit. We all know that no kits should be plagued by adult matters, but Naruto was. He insisted on remaining faithful to me, but every female kitsune knows how demanding it is to keep a full-blooded male satisfied. The human aspect in him made that even more intense. I had no desire to deny him love nor to be left in such a sorry state from his passion. I insisted on him finding human mates, and it has become the greatest blessing of my life. Let's just say that even with 7 wives and 11 mates that he still keeps all of us sated. That is all I will say on that topic. Kyuufin, a 6-tailed warrior kitsune, puffed out his chest. I wish to challenge him to determine whether he is worthy. He was cut off by a potent flare of killing intent from Hikari, who was calmed by a hand on the shoulder from Naruto. Naruto's electric eyes lit up as he glared down. Kyuufin, you may accompany me on my first mission. If you are able to best my kill count, then I will entertain a direct challenge from you. Kyuufin snorted, you are but a Hanyu. Us kitsune are masters of yokai. Hikari burst out in laughter, you fool, do you see those 6 tails? Naruto's tails are equal to the tails of power granted to the biju by the sage. Hikari paused as she saw Naruto hold up a hand a wink. As I said, Kyuufin, once I understand the situation, you may accompany me for my first mission. You will understand the clear difference between you and I then. Furthermore, I am no longer a half-demon. It is more like I am mostly demonic, and I have developed my own yokai core. Surely you know what that means, Naruto said with a smirk, and the kitsune recoiled. How is that possible, Naruto-sama? Kyuubi asked. Only the 8-tailed kitsune have ever done that, and Hikari-sama is the only one to perfect it. Naruto simply shrugged, so Hikari took over, my core is still residing within Naruto-kun. He trained from a young age and pushed his body to the brink. He earned his first 3 tails by the time he was 14, all on his own effort. On top of that, he has defeated many of the tailed beasts within their human hosts. Upon defeating them, I realized that he could absorb their yokai. I funneled this into a core, and it has been generating yokai and growing as reserves since. He will be my equal in a matter of years, and he has the potential to surpass me. The room froze in shock and denial. The implications of this were revolutionary for the kitsune, the strongest clan in Makai, to imagine. There were many questions racing through their minds, but they would have a long time to contemplate it later. As the room remained frozen, it was Minato's laughter that broke him from his musings. Minato's laughter continued to escalate as tears of pride trickled into his fur. Mind filling us in on the joke, Minato-kun? Kushina asked with her lips tugging upwards into an amused smile. Minato used a tail to wipe the tear from his eye. Oh, I just trained my ass off for the past 30 years in this realm, and my son was my equal in half the time. I am so proud of him. Kyuubi slammed a tail on the table. Minato-kun, you were and are the most prolific kitsune of all time. Hikari-sama's presence within the child has made him into the kitsune Hanyu he is. There is no shame in your achievements, child. Hikari scoffed, after completing his transition, I have done very little to further Naruto's power. Only my excess aura did anything. Do not devalue my mate's achievements. Kyuubi bowed, my apologies, Kyuubi-sama. Naruto stepped forward, look, time is counting down. I want to make the most of my time here. Can you fill me in and point me in the right direction? An hour later, the sun was setting over the kitsune forest. Naruto went to Minato's comfy home, and Minato pulled out a couple extra mats for his guests. They spent the night catching up over some fire whiskey, the preferred drink of the kitsune. Hikari decided to return to the seal in order to help prepare Naruto for tomorrow's mission. She wanted to see how much stronger the pigs and cows had gotten. She couldn't begin to imagine how the orcs and minotaurs were actually pressing the major clans. The two cuddled inside the privacy of the mindscape, and Hikari made the most of the time they had alone. She was so content when she was with Naruto that she lost herself to pleasure and lust. She let Naruto take her in any way he wanted, in every way he could imagine. It always helped that every way Naruto took her made her scream out in pleasure. After their session, they enjoyed a good night's rest together with body against body and tails intertwined with tails. The next day, Naruto attempted to summon Virginia to the demonic realm after Hikari assured him that it would work. When Virginia arrived, she was more than a little surprised. It was the first time she had ever been summoned to Makai. The only eagles that had ever been to Makai were Old York and Lady Marika. However, her reaction was nothing compared to the kitsune. The look on Kyuufin's face when Naruto told him to hop on was hilarious. Minato obliged with no objections, and Kushina did as well. Finally, Kyuufin shrunk his size enough so that it wouldn't be a burden on the bird, and finally Naruto kipped up. He waved goodbye to Hikari, who the kitsune insisted stay within Karyu for her own safety. Kyuufin also said that it wouldn't be fair if Hikari were to get involved in their competition. Hikari simply shrugged it off because she could always link senses with Naruto anyways, thanks to the soul link. Thus, Hikari curled up on a bed in the command tower and linked her senses to Naruto's to make sure she didn't miss the show. In the air, Kyuubi gave directions to Naruto, who passed them to Virginia. They had roughly an hour-long trip, and that allowed for a conversation. Of course, Kushina was eager to find out more about Minato's life as a kitsune. She wanted to know what it was going to be like when she accepted Hikari's deal. Well, they are a pleasant clan. The world is quite different and yet very similar in most ways. The biggest differences are clan practices and behavioral customs. Of course, there is far more war in this world than in the elemental nations as well, even if that is no longer the case. Yet, the camaraderie, kinship and joy of life is still here. It will be even better now that the realms are linked once more. Kushina nodded along. So, Kitsune told us that you have quite the fan club. Is that one of the similarities? Kyuubi laughed boisterously as Minato blushed. Kyuubi answered for him, indeed he does. He is the only demon I know that has ever declined so many mating offerings. It has made your name quite the urban legend, Kushina-sama. Kushina blushed and Naruto took over. So, what can you tell me about the orcs and Minotaur? What should we expect in battle? Minato got back into serious mode at the question. The orcs look like pig-human hybrids. The adults stand about 8 to 12 feet tall and typical are not well armed. Their elites wear plated armor and wield a variety of heavy weaponry. They are stronger than us but also much slower. Their strength is in their numbers and formations. The Minotaur are fierce warriors. They stand anywhere from 10 to 20 feet tall, and their hide is incredibly tough. My wind and lightning yokai has proved to be enough to deal with most of them. Their elites are a different story, however. The elites' hides are heavily chakra/yokai resistant and durable. They use brute strength and often wield dual-bladed axes or halberds. They typically fight in twos and their strength is devastating. Naruto nodded along and asked a question. What do they have for ranged attacks? Anything other than thrown weapons? Kyuubi answered this one. No, they see ranged attacks as dishonorable and will charge through them. Naruto smirked foxily. Good, very good. Hey Pops, you want to see how I completed the Rasengan? Minato's jaw dropped. You completed it? Naruto nodded. Yes, I did. With all three of my primary elements. For an elite, I would use lightning style. For the pigs, I will try out the water style. For formations, I will hit them with the wind style. Hey, Ginny, can I use sage mode here? Virginia turned her head as she glided through the air. The natural energy here is weaker. It will take you longer to gather. We are approximately 15 minutes out. Kyuubi informed the group. Naruto immediately sank into a lotus position on Virginia's back. Minato could feel the gathering of natural energy and he couldn't miss the cloud cover that began to settle over the region and the winds that stirred at their backs. The darkening of the clouds and the increased static electricity made Minato's and Kyuubi's hairs stand on end. They were each watching the blonde Hanyu carefully as they sensed the rise in his chakra. Go down here, it looks like the battle has resumed. There is Isabu-sama, Kyuubi said over the roar of the wind. Ginny, let's introduce them to the eagles, Naruto said with a foxy smirk on his face. Rather than descend, Virginia banked upwards into the darkening cloud bank that formed suddenly over the area. As the screaming eagle composed of wind and lightning descended from the sky, the battle between the Turtle Clan and orcs froze. Naruto saw a group of armored minotaurs and a giant orc overlooking the battle. He smirked as he altered the trajectory of the screaming eagle towards what was obviously the command group. Kyuubi's jaw dropped after Virginia leveled out because Naruto's jutsu had just decimated an orc general, a couple orc captains and 10 minotaur elites in one fell swoop. Then, Kyuubi watched as the man jumped off of the eagle's back and formed two swirling spheres, one in each hand. Then wind blades appeared on them, and the spheres grew before he hurled them like a projectile at the amassed formation of orcs. In a vibrant explosion of white chakra light, wind domes appeared that were 100 meters in diameter. Kyuubi remained frozen on Virginia's back after witnessing the display. Minato and Kushina had already dismounted and were engaging the enemy, but there was no way he could compete against that. The amount of power the Hanyu was throwing around was astounding. Virginia squawked in agitation and broke Kyuubi out of his stunned state. He jumped down and grew to his full size before he landed and engaged the orcs. Naruto immediately encased himself in his lightning armor and brought out his tempest chains. He was far less reserved about killing these demons than he was about killing humans. Heaven's Blessing and Uzu no Hashi, the name he granted to his katana, were wielded in each hand while encased in copious amounts of wind chakra. He blurred through the slow pigs with zero hesitation and began decimating them by the tens and then the hundreds. He allowed his Hanyu instincts to take over and everyone designated an enemy would experience the full weight of his wrath. Minato was dealing with a group of orcs before he jumped out of the way as a blade of water lashed out of Kushina's katana. The sharpened and hardened water cut through two rows of orcs before the jutsu lost its potent edge. Minato capitalized on the new opening, and he dashed through the opening in the ranks as wind blades lashed out from his tails. The taller and slower orcs were unable to adjust in time and they died with almost no opposition. Aisabu watched the shift in battle with a pleased smile on his rough face. He knew who had arrived as soon as the lightning eagle descended from the skies. He was less than pleased when he arrived in Makai to find his clan under assault. He was further displeased by the arrival of the human that stole his father's eyes. It put him in a tight spot, and these were much needed and most welcome reinforcements. Aisabu marveled at how efficiently Naruto wielded his yokai. Perhaps that was why his father, the sage, said that the biju were supposed to work with mankind. Surely, they would have been able to learn from one another, if the humans hadn't given in to their fear. To Aisabu, Naruto represented the true vision of what the sage had in mind when he said that. He freed him from his enslavement and captivity and immediately returned him to Makai. That was more than he could have asked from any human. Aisabu's chakra resonated with the two techniques Naruto was wielding. It was a potent gathering of raw chakra and water chakra. It spun and resembled the Bijudama that he and his siblings were admittedly over-reliant on. He watched in amazement as the two spheres exploded and thousands of blades of water erupted from the impact. They were spinning at such a high speed that the water blades tore through anything that got in their path. Those two ressensuous Ho decimated nearly 400 orcs on their own. The turtle clan rallied around the reinforcements and pushed back the orcs. Turtles were not overly aggressive and their offensive ninjutsu were fairly weak, but when multiple turtles worked together, they could summon the wrath of the seas. Aisabu contributed to this effort and two tidal waves assaulted either side of the battlefield. Aisabu chuckled as the blonde Hanyu shot him a cheeky look as he jumped into the air and landed on the backside of the tidal wave. Once the battle was over, Naruto, flanked by Minato and Kushina, trailed by a deeply humbled Kyuubi, approached Aisabu. Naruto gave the head of the turtle clan a curt bow of the head, which Aisabu returned respectfully. "Thank you for your assistance, Uzumaki Naruto. I once again find myself in your debt," Aisabu said in a humble and deep rumble. Naruto smiled, "Yeah, it hasn't been long. How is life in Makai treating you?" Aisabu grumbled, "I am still recovering from my reformation. When Fugaku appeared not long ago, I was able to retreat deep into the waters with my clan. It was embarrassing, but I have no time for pride that would result in me being sealed once more. That was what I wanted to talk to you about, big guy. I don't want you getting captured, and I cannot stay in Makai long. What would you have me do?" Aisabu asked. "That is difficult. If I asked you to stay on Uzushiagakure until I can finish this war, what would you say?" Naruto asked genuinely. Aisabu looked back with his lone eye and his craggy face frowned. "I cannot simply abandon my clan to hide. We can retreat to the water should the human return," Naruto sighed. "Alright, if you change your mind or need assistance, then contact the Kitsune. I assume this was enough to cement the alliance." Aisabu nodded. "We will fight and defend alongside the Kitsune. Stay safe, Uzumaki Naruto. I owe you 2 favors now." Naruto waved him off. "Just do what you can to make Makai a better place. If you can trade some fresh fish with the Kitsune, that would be awesome too. Oh, and crabs. Please give them some crabs. Hikari-chan wants them when she returns here." Aisabu chuckled deeply. "Very well. Travel safe, Uzumaki Dono." The calm before the final storm. After returning from Makai, everyone was just a little happier than before they visited. Kushina was grateful to see Minato again and she was looking forward to her time with the Kitsune clan. Naruto was able to relieve some stress and remove some pressure on that side of the portal. Hikari was immensely relieved to see her kin again and she was pleased with how well received Naruto had been. After Kyuubi recounted the battle, Naruto experienced a level of hero worship that no Kitsune other than Hikari had received. Overall, it was a pleasant and productive trip to Makai. Naruto returned and received a status update on the war. Fugaku had been quiet and moved into defensive positions. Konoha forces pulled out of Kaze no Kuni entirely and reinforced River Country's borders. River Country was much harder to assault and easier to defend than Kaze no Kuni. They had also gone scorched earth during the retreat to make it nearly impossible for the Iwa forces to pursue. Getting an army through a 4-day trip through the desert is no small feat. Wave Country had recovered the dead and established a solid base within Fire Country. They were just holding positions and waiting for orders to assault. There was still a presence of allied forces that would be able to withstand most direct assaults. The use of seals to reinforce structures and barriers that would delay the Hokage should he arrive, and a variety of other defenses were erected. It paid off to have a shinobi corps gifted in the sealing arts. Ame had been taken care of by the combined might of the alliance. It was overflowing with medical shinobi, supplies and support. The situation was still dire and quite desperate, But it was stabilizing day by day. Most of the citizens were evacuated to Kaminari no Kuni and only engineers, construction workers and the critically wounded remained on the island. The recovery of Amiga Corps would take a while, but like every other wound, it would heal in time. Naruto dismissed the council after the updates were given and he said that all forces were to use the next week to prepare, relax and get their minds right. He then left a blood clone and went to New Uzu to get some time with his family. It might not have been the appropriate time for it, but family came before all, and Naruto missed his family. Thus, he abducted his girls from their battlefield positions, collected the Uzumaki girls and prepared a feast's worth of food for family dinner. "Thanks for the food, Ruto-kun," Amy said as she cuddled into Naruto. The girls agreed to let her have the real Naruto after the attack on Ame. "How are you holding up, Amy-chan?" Naruto asked while everyone else offered sympathetic glances. Amy sighed, "It is tough, and I know it will hit me harder later on. For now, I just want to kick the shit out of every Uchiha alive." Her look of anger turned abashed as she glanced at Itachi. "Sorry, Chi-chan, that obviously doesn't include my favorite 3 Uchiha." Itachi waved her off. "We are Uzumaki now. My father lost himself and my brother was always a lost cause. The rest of the clan was just as guilty. I bear more love for every single one of you than any of them." Maya grabbed Itachi's hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. Anko turned to Kushina and spoke in her teasing tone, "So, Mama, how was it seeing Papa Fox again?" Kushina blushed. "Well, it was great. It was a little frustrating that he can't transform yet, but let's just say I left him with some proper motivation to get stronger." "Ow, ow." Mabui cheered. "Go get it, Mama." Which made Kushina blush tomato red like her old nickname at the academy. "Speaking of Mama, how are you holding up with the baby, Amy-chan? War can't be good for that." Samui asked. Amy rubbed her stomach affectionately. "Well, it wasn't too hard initially. Now that my belly is growing it is more difficult. I just don't want it to take me out of the final assault." Naruto frowned despite Hikari rubbing the back of his neck affectionately. "Amy, don't lose yourself to revenge. The fucker will die, but that is not the important thing. Your health and the health of the baby are far more important to me." Amy looked down at the table. "I know, Ruto, but..." Kushina rose from her chair and wrapped Amy up from behind. "We share in all things, Amy-chan. Revenge will never be as important as family. Plus, Ame needs you right now and your people should be more important than any thoughts of revenge." Amy nodded silently. "Chuya, never the one to get stuck in the mud, change the topic. So, shithead, when are we going to bend those bastards over the barrel and fuck 'em in the ass?" Naruto ignored the crass nature of the statement and thought for a bit. "Early next week. I want Iwa, Ame and a third of Kumo's forces to take the fire capital. I have a feeling that Zetsu has been imitating Kenji since the start of the war. No daimyo worth his salt would have backed Fugaku the way he did. Then, the main force from Wave is going to wrap and flank the Ame border. Once everyone is reunited, we move on Konoha." Itachi chirped, "That simple, eh?" Naruto shrugged, "I think so. I am going to be involved the whole way. I am done with this bullshit, and I am not going to let Fugaku lash out at another one of our villages again. Yeah, the reports of him using a bird summon to move around the way we do are unsettling. The damned Rinnegan is a cheat code." Kushina pouted. "We have the crows and eagles watching the skies. If he travels that way, we will know about it," Naruto said. "What happened to the dissenters and the refugees?" Tsunami asked. "They are currently being held with their chakra sealed in Wave Country. Most of the samurai are no problem, the dissenters are assisting with prisoner containment and the rest will be tried by a communal once the war is over. The Nara, Akimichi, Aburame and Sarutobi clans just turned themselves into our forces at Wave as well. Sazumi told me that you captured the Yamanaka girl. She also said that the Haruno girl died during the assault on the encampment." Itachi added to the conversation. "It is nice that a couple of the few decent remaining people in Konoha joined us. Good riddance." Naruto muttered, "Now I won't have to worry about my eardrums being blown out. And yes, I am glad that they will be spared from the final assault." Kushina nodded at that. "What are you going to do with the branch Hyuga? We couldn't trust them early on, but they would be indebted to us if we remove their seals." Mabui offered the solution. "What about a fealty contract? They swear never to raise arms against the Uzumaki and their allies in return for their freedom." "Seems cool," Samui said as she polished off another crab leg. "But those elders need to die. I don't want to deal with them." "Agreed," said almost everyone around the table. "Can we just hurry up and end the war so I can have a baby of my own?" Maya pleaded. "I want one so badly." Kushina laughed merrily and Tuya couldn't let that one go. "Get in line, Princess Lava." Just because you're sexy, smoking hot mama is knocked up doesn't mean that you're next in line for the shithead's cum dumpster. If shithead doesn't plow my ass into next week before the end of the war, then I will just fucking give up and start playing for the other team. A lot of sexy cunts running around the island now. Oh, how bold, Yuya-chan, Karen teased. Aw, shut the fuck up, shithead already knocked you up. Jesus, you look like a fucking whale now. I heard that those little parasites rip you up on the way out. Think shithead likes throwing hot dogs down hallways? Yuya. The family chorused. Everyone was used to chastising Tuya into submission when her verbal diarrhea crossed the line. Tuya dipped her head and apologized, sorry, I can only listen to stories of shithead's prowess for so long before I go insane. Cammy damn it, now I need another fucking change of panties. Thanks a lot, shithead. Everyone shook their heads at the most animated member of the family's antics. Hikari decided to take over. If you just want a ride, then go find someone else. If you love our man, then that is a different matter entirely. Rias giggled, oh, she loves him, Richan. She can just never come out and say it straight. Aw, little tsundere-chan. Having trouble being honest with your feelings? Itachi teased. Every girl knew of Tuya's connection to Naruto, even before Atsui's death. The only thing holding Tuya back was the whole social stigma, which wasn't even real. They weren't even directly related, second cousins thrice removed. Shit, according to Hyuga standards that was practically like marrying a foreigner. Tuya lost most of her piss and vinegar as embarrassment took over. Go fuck yourselves. You cunts were just lucky I didn't turn him into my own sex slave when we were younger. Naruto chuckled at that. Even then, Richan had my heart. It wouldn't have worked. Aw, fuck you and your sexy fucking ass, shithead. Tuya pouted before slamming her head on the table. Dinner continued in the lively and familiar manner of the Uzumaki. It was a good break from the war, and it set the stage for a wild night. It wasn't an orgy like the wedding night, but it was a whole lot of Naruto laying a whole lot of pipe. Naruto went one round personally with every one of his wives while his clones covered for him in the meantime. He went extra hard on Tuya and left her in a crumpled and cum-covered mess with the biggest, goofiest and most contented grin on her sleeping face. Converging the war fronts, Fugaku knew that he was losing the war and he took advantage of the decisive defeat that the Orcs and Minotaur clans suffered against the Turtle clan due to Naruto's intervention. He convinced the Orc Lord and Minotaur Lord that they could wreak as much havoc as they wanted on the humans of the elemental nations as long as they finished Naruto. He even promised them parts of Kaminari no Kuni as payment for their assistance. That was how 10,000 Orcs and 3,000 Minotaur found themselves formed up in front of Konoha. Fugaku, this is foolish. Black Zetsu said while lamenting the fact that the fool was far too strong for him to betray at the current moment. Fugaku scoffed, this is what they get for opening the portal. These Orcs and Minotaur races have never seen so much lavishness as this world has. They will serve me so long as they can have access to this world. Black Zetsu shook his head, they will betray you and bring this land to ruin. I am a god. With these eyes, they cannot begin to defy me. I killed 2 of the strongest shinobi alive by my own hands and power. Once I kill the Uzumaki brat, I will have achieved victory over this world. The Orc and Minotaur races will just be more servants for my ascension. Deranged bastard. Zetsu thought, who thinks that getting eyes makes them a god? He is no more a god than I am a human. Minstro, the Minotaur Lord, and Kerchak, the Orc Lord, approached Fugaku. They each towered over the man but they each knew that they couldn't kill the man. A moment of silence passed between the 4 and Minstro spoke in his deep, rumbling baritone. Hokage, when will we move out? We have our own war to win once we are done here. Then, we will unite the 2 dimensions under our rule. Fugaku looked placidly at the nearly 22-foot tall Minotaur. The enemy is coming to us. Take this time to have your men get acquainted with the area. Make no mistake, the fight is coming to us. It will be interesting to see how they hold up against shinobi of our world. Kerchak snorted, they will fall to the horde. We will consume their bodies and devour their chakra. Minstro looked to Kerchak, who was 4 feet smaller than him, but still a staggering 18 feet tall. My partner is right, they will not be ready. What is the battle plan and what will your forces be doing? Will the one who summons storms be here? Fugaku nodded, my shinobi will be the main attraction and we will meet them in this field. Your hordes are to hide in the U-shaped forest that surrounds the field. My friend's clones will lock the enemies into a fight from behind. Root forces will target the medical and supply caravans. That will allow your forces to charge. Minstro pounded his defined and diamond-hard chest with his fists before shouting, I like it. The roar of battle calls to me. The blood of battle calls to me, Kerchak roared. The hordes behind the Minotaur and Orc Lord clattered their weapons and answered their call. March on Konoha. After flanking the forts and eliminating the resistance on the Ame border, the forces of Kumo, Ame, Uzu, Iwa and even Kiri marched towards Konoha. Kiri decided to commit 1,000 shinobi and 2,000 samurai for the final battle. Iwa marched through Suna and north of river country, which bypassed the entrenched defenses. They brought 2,000 shinobi and 4,000 samurai with them. They linked up with the Allied forces just south of the Ame border and the meeting of the Allied leaders began. Naruto clapped his hands together to quiet the room full of influential people. Alright everyone, I have something to share with you that is going to be a lot to take in. For those of you who are unaware, there are multiple parallel dimensions to ours. The most commonly well-known dimension is the summoning dimension. What is not as well known is that the dimension called Makai also exists. This is the dimension that the biju originated from before the Sage of Six Paths divided the power of the Kyuubi into 9 parts. The sage imbued these creatures referred to as demons with the potent chakra of the Kyuubi and created the 9 biju. Before Hashirama sealed the biju, the link between these two dimensions was open. After Madara tampered with the husk of the Kyuubi, the dimensions closed. It appears like Fugaku undid this block and he has called on the demonic enemies of the biju to support his cause. Onoki was rubbing his temples as his granddaughter interrupted, "What nonsense are you spouting?" Naruto sighed and pointed to Chome and Kokuo, who were shrunken down to fit in the command center. "Allow me to introduce you to Kokuo and Chome, better known as the 5 Tails and 7 Tails to the people of this realm. I freed them from the Uchiha, and they have agreed to fight against the orcs and Minotaur with us. Chome, could you please explain?" Chome used her 6 wings to hover in the air and had a single blue-silver tail hanging down. "What Naruto-sama says is true. We biju never wished to mingle with humanity. We simply return to this realm every now and then to check over our realms to honor our father's wish. Makai is our home and each of us biju are leaders of our own demonic clans. Yo, what Miss Dragonfly says is true, now listen for what to do, instructions Naruto will give, listen if you wish to live." B spoke in a slightly ominous rap. Naruto sighed once more and rubbed his temples. "Thanks B, I can take it from here. What you need to know is that we are going against 4,000 remaining shinobi, unknown number of plant creatures, 10,000 orcs and 3,000 minotaur if my eagles are to be believed. Spoiler, you should believe them." Yahiko, recently recovered from his injuries, frowned and asked, "What are these orcs and minotaur?" Naruto explained what he knew to the room. "Holy shit," Yahiko gasped after hearing the explanation. Ao frowned before speaking. "If they are each tuning to Jonin level, then we will suffer absurd amounts of casualties once the fighting starts." Naruto smirked. "They possess no ranged jutsu. When I went to Makai, I was able to slaughter nearly 1,400 orcs in a single hour and I killed a Minotaur general in my opening attack. So, they are beatable for you. Naruto, you do realize that most shinobi don't possess your speed or firepower, right?" Mei asked. She may have been pregnant with Ai's child, but she was still a respected figure and worked from the command center on the war front. Naruto shrugged. "They are able to work in teams and use combination jutsu to compensate. Kiri can bring the water while Kumo supplies the lightning. Iwa can entrap them in earth and Ame can bury them. What I am saying is do not be afraid. My lust for battle draws me in. I feel the call to avenge my predecessor and father figure. I feel my blood boil when the cows and pigs dared set foot in my realm. I only ask that your men support me and cover me should I fall. Reikage-sama, I know you are strong, but you cannot fight against the whole army by yourself," Onoki said. "Plus, it is the job of the old folk to lead the charge." Naruto put a hand on Onoki's shoulder as he floated. "I would be honored to fight by your side. However, I am already more of a demon to those in Konoha than my father ever was to Iwa. Let me shoulder this hatred, Onoki. You clean up my opening act." Ao frowned. "Naruto, we all appreciate how much you have shouldered, but this is asking too much." Naruto shook his head. "No it is not. I will bring the might of Makai's greatest clan with me. You see, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, my wife, is the leader of that great clan. When they heard about the orcs getting involved, they readily offered their support. I am not saying that I will take the whole fight alone. I simply say that I do not wish for my allies to get caught up in my wrath." Hikari took this moment to manifest next to Naruto. "My mate is right. Let us open the door and disorient them. Even the cows and pigs will learn to fear." Yahiko sighed. "Very well, how would you format the attack?" Naruto used the Kitsune illusion art to project the estimated battlefield. He went through the battle as he envisioned it stage by stage that were broken down by timestamps. Once the presentation was over, the room remained silent for a while as they each formatted their questions. The first to start was Kushina. "Reikage Dono, Why don't you fall back after the opening assault? Allow the main forces to engage and draw out the Hokage, Orc Lord and Minotaur Lord? Hikari answered for Naruto, the Orc Lord and Minotaur Lord will charge out during Naruto's first assault. They are each easily on cage level. Conventional weapons and jutsu will not be able to fell them. Even the most potent weapons of Jonin level would barely scratch them. They need to be removed from the battlefield before my mate would risk those he loves. And what if Fugaku gets involved right away? Onoki challenged. He won't, Naruto replied simply, he is a coward. Onoki belted out a laugh at that. Very well, I request to be part of the emergency forces on your eagles. As do I, Kushina said. And I. Samui and Mabui said simultaneously. I will stand ready, Itachi said calmly. Chojuro, Haku and Zabuza stood up, we volunteer. The demon of the hidden mist volunteered. We are in on this. Yahiko smirked as Konan, Nagato and Amy rose beside him. Fight with my brother from Anuta Mother, wouldn't rather have Anuta, be said. Yugito groaned, count me in. Kokuo grew to the size of a large dog and stood beside Naruto, I will be in the second stage of the attack. Should you need me, there is nobody faster. Naruto cocked an eyebrow at the horse, I think we need to race then, Kokuo. He then stroked the mane on the dolphin horse's head. Kushina facepalmed as her Sochi ruined the touching moment, alright, well, there is nothing left to do other than march and fight. Agreed, Onoki said stoically. Let's get this shit over with, Tuya shouted. Once this bothersome war is over, I am taking a nap, Daru said through a yawn. Beginning of the battle and start of the storm, Naruto was flying at high altitude above his forces while he had a shadow clone accompanying each battalion. He closed his eyes and focused on his breathing as the wind blew through his hair while he soared above the clouds. The whole of the Eagle clan flew beside him carrying people that he had come to love and trust. With them, he could conquer the world, with them, he feared no evil. He rode atop America while flanked by Virginia and Georgia with Old York at the tail. He went into the mindscape and embraced Hikari in a hug. They were going to push their link further than it had ever been pushed in this battle, and he wanted to take a moment to pay homage to his mate and first source of strength. His massive arms flexed as they wrapped around the Kitsune beauty and pulled her warmth into him. Eyes locked within the embrace. The unshakable strength of the electric azure blue locked with the passionate blood-red eyes of the Kitsune goddess. Their lips touched lightly in a sincere exchange of meaning that let each partner know how much their bond meant to the other. After a fluttering of the eyelids, eyes locked once more as soul connected entirely to soul. I trust you with all that I am, Naruto whispered lightly. As do I. Hikari replied softly before Naruto leaned forward and touched his forehead to hers. Naruto exited the mindscape and felt Hikari begin to synchronize with his yokai core. He felt her overwhelming power flood his coils and his tails started glowing in power. 3 more tails that were composed of bright red-orange chakra formed out of his coccyx and swayed naturally behind him. Simultaneously, Naruto used his increased chakra to pull on more of the natural energy in the air. A sage must maintain a balance and could only pull as much natural energy as the chakra he had. With Hikari bolstering his already insane chakra, Naruto caused a tempest to form instantaneously in response to the titanic gathering of natural energy within the skies over Hai no Kuni. While Naruto glowed with power brighter than the sun, the world witnessed the birth of a true tempest. The whole of the elemental nations became encased in a rapidly swirling cloud cover that all centered over Fire Country. Despite the wide range of the storm, the rains only began to fall in Hai no Kuni. Despite the intensity of the storm, the thunder controlled itself and rumbled rhythmically along with the beat of Naruto's heart. Despite the violence of the tempest, no harm or harsh rains fell on his allies. His wrath was reserved in its entirety for his enemies. Naruto rose to his feet as the golden glow of Hikari's hardened yokai encased his form. The Senjutsu chakra formed a brilliant light blue coating around the yokai cloak. The 9 tails glowed golden and emitted sparks that turned into gusts of wind, sheets of rain or strikes of potent lightning. With his preparations made, he reached down and patted the neck of Marika to let her know he was ready. The rest of the eagles remained above and watched their leaders dive in a majestic display of grace and power down towards the cloud bank. The Konoha, Orc and Minotaur forces looked into the sky as a massive vortex formed among the darkening clouds. Shouts rang out through their ranks and defenses were formed on top of defenses as they began shaking in fear. They had all heard stories of what came next, and they didn't know if they would survive what was to follow. They didn't know if they could survive the wrath of the Tenshi no Raijin, bringer of storms. Fugaku looked up from the Hokage tower as the skies darkened. His Rinnegan detected a massive swell of chakra that looked like a bright sun shining through the pitch-black clouds and sheets of rain. He felt the Kyuubi's chakra once more, but it felt different, very different. The chakra felt all-powerful, calm and determined. Not like the rage he remembered from the Kyuubi attack or invasion. Fugaku watched in horror as the biggest tornado he has ever seen descended from the sky on the back of a golden sun that radiated shocks of electricity and wind. Fugaku didn't know what was going to happen, but he knew that his plans would not stand up to a force such as that. He watched in disbelief as streaks of lightning fired from the sky like a machine gun and rained down electric hell onto the positions of his forces. The thunder rumbled into a terrifying cacophony of sound that pressed down on the mortals below in the form of air pressure alone. The golden light formed into the head of a kitsune fox, and it let loose a roar from thunder as it descended from the sky. Naruto called out, "Sage arts, might of Inari." Marika banked out of her dive, but Naruto jumped off her back and led the charge of copious amounts of chakra to the ground at terminal velocity. Naruto's whole body was flooded with his chakra, natural energy and Hikari's yokai as he was mere meters from the ground. In the next millisecond, the world knew the newest definition of destruction. As Naruto impacted the ground, he unleashed his potent combination of energy into the ground and caused a tidal wave of earth. However, before the tidal wave of earth could take off, a blunt force wind slammed into the whole surrounding area that was strong enough to flatten and rattle the earth. The wind was followed by a tremendous streak of lightning that joined the assault and struck down onto Naruto's position. Naruto had landed in the central point of the enemy formation. The formation nearest him was disintegrated from the raw power before the true show even began. The earth that began erupting was flattened by the wind, but it refused to stay in place after so much energy was transferred into it. If it couldn't roll outwards, then it would explode outwards. As the wind slammed into it, the violent winds sent shards and chunks of earth flying faster than speeding bullets all around the area. As the lightning descended, its charge spread through the volatile grounds and sheets of rain. Shinobi fell as shrapnel composed of hardened earth pierced their defenses and shredded their bodies. The wind blast that accompanied Naruto's dive collided with the ground and exploded outwards. It sent shinobi, samurai, orcs and minotaur flying indiscriminately. It flattened trees and decimated defenses. Its force reached the walls and buildings of Konoha and ripped the roofs of their homes. Its wrath screamed outwards and shredded the puny mortals that dared to defy its natural power. Lightning seared the skies and electrified the rain as it tore its way through the skies and connected with their master. Their master collected the potent power before letting it explode outwards in a terrifying display of mastery over the lightning element. Blue arcs of electricity erupted from the center of the newly formed crater and joined the symphony of natural disaster. It arced from raindrop to raindrop and sheet of rain to sheet of rain while it electrocuted everything in between. Onoki nearly shit his pants as he watched the display from the clouds. It simultaneously astounded and terrified him. If Minato was a demon, then Naruto would be the devil himself. At least, he would be, but Naruto was on his side. Naruto's efforts were saving the lives of his men and women. Naruto's destruction was Iwa's salvation. Itachi watched on in a worried amazement. Her man was always so willing to shoulder the burdens of those he loved. Despite that terrible habit, not once had he let her down. Not once had he disappointed her. He had always charged forward majestically with no trace of fear or trepidation. His courage made her love him more, his strength inspired her, and his protective aura enveloped her in peace and let her know that everything would be okay, despite the chaos. Samui watched on in genuine jealousy of her husband's mastery over the lightning element. Mere years ago, she at least considered herself within touching distance. That soon turned into watching him run ahead of her, but she never let the sight of his back bother her. He had always wielded his power on behalf of those he loved. He loved so passionately, so selflessly and so intensely that it inspired her and kept her moving forward. Mabui watched on with her hands clenched over her chest as her husband made his defining statement to the world. If you mess with those he loves, he will spare you no mercy. His wrath was all-encompassing like the storm. His anger was always wielded in defense of those he counted as precious. His strength was always born for those he wished to protect. His love was protective, selfless and complete, and that was all Mabui needed. Amy watched from afar as she led forces on the back lines. Her keen chakra sensing felt Naruto elevate to the point of godhood. Her eyes looked to the skies where she knew Naruto was about to do something amazing. The air crackled with his chakra, and it tickled her skin in a fond protectiveness. She watched as he descended from the skies on the back of his faithful summon. She felt the powerful explosion as wind rocked her camp from miles away. Despite its power, it only served to reassure her and calm her heart. Maya watched from atop Kansen as her husband led the charge against his enemies. His golden form inspired her and made her womanhood tingle. The power he held at his disposal inspired her to reach greater heights, even if she could not stand side by side with him. Her chakra boiled as the explosion decimated everything within 500 meters of its epicenter. Her heart raced as Kansen dived to play his part in the second stage of the attack. Hikari was reveling in the overwhelming sensation of the full synchronization. The entirety of her being mingled with her mate's own, and the feeling couldn't be put into words. It was ethereal, wonderful, magnificent, and as soon as you tried to put it into words, it disappeared from the tip of the tongue in a mysterious wisp. Despite the frustrating inability to put it into words, the feeling was intoxicating and overpowering as her power exploded into the surviving environment. Her demon blood resonated with her mates as their souls cried out, and the demon in her reveled in the thousands of deaths that started this destined battle. Kushina dove through the skies atop Florida, and she let out her battle cry as her son did something no mortal man had done since the times of the sage. Her heart swelled with pride as the wind ripped through her hair and formed it into long tails behind her. Her motherly instinct urged Florida down faster as she wanted to join the fight by her son's side. Her womanly instinct saw Minato racing onto the battlefield through the chaos, and she wanted to join him and fight by his side. Kakashi watched as the man that he used to call a little brother decimated people that he used to call friends. Of course, he also killed Root, orcs, Minotaur, and every other kind of enemy, but he thought about those that chose to fight with his former home. He surprised himself when he realized he no longer cared. He was happy to realize that he was proud of the man Naruto became. He was honored to join the battle by his side. The fallout from the wrath of heaven was immaculate in its entirety and deafening in its silence. The wind pressure had pushed the rains away, and all of nature paid homage to the incredible display by encompassing Hai no Kuni in silence after the explosion completed its roar. The screams of 100 eagles descending from the heavens spurred the world back into motion. The rains fell in sheets, the lightning struck with violent precision. The winds roared once more while being interrupted by the pounding of thunder that continued to increase in intensity. Naruto recovered from the recoil of the attack after hearing the screaming of his summoning clan. He was still encompassed in a golden form with wisps of white and bluish-black chakra emanating from his form. 9 tails glowed powerfully behind him, and his senses pinpointed the strongest surviving chakra signatures. Naruto's feet blurred into motion as he began climbing the mile-in-diameter crater that was nearly 300 meters deep. He eclipsed the edge of the crater and momentarily froze as the destruction of his attack sank in. Alarm bells rang throughout Konoha as citizens were evacuating through the sheets of pouring rain and flashes of lightning. Citizens ran in a panic as the winds threatened to lift them off their feet. The terror inspired by the explosion and violent storm made them rue the day that they treated the Kyuubi Jinchuriki the way they did. While the children were innocent, the adults and young adults remembered and rapidly came to regret their actions. Their feet carried them in a disorganized chaos to the shelters that would hopefully protect them against this madness. Fugaku shook off the shock of the explosion. If he didn't want to lose everything, he needed to get involved in the battle now. He needed as many of his forces as he could save to topple the might of the Tenshi no Raijin. He heard the screams of battle erupt over the roar of the storm, and his heart raced as he appeared in front of his remaining elite forces. They would join the battle, and Fugaku would prove that he was a god once and for all. Opening assault and birth of chaos, the screaming eagles descended from their skies and launched blasts of blunted wind that scattered and disorganized the enemy before they dropped off their charges. The strongest shinobi of the alliance dismounted and led the charge into the target-rich environment. The initial minutes of the battle were heavily in their favor as their enemies were still rattled by Naruto's opening attack. Kakashi dismounted and sheathed his katana in purple lightning as he found himself in the middle of an orc army. His training with Naruto granted him a higher control over lightning, and the seal on his sword condensed his already potent lightning to the point that it turned purple. His experienced mind told him that the difference in size meant nothing when speed was his thing, and his Sharingan could predict their attacks. The purple lightning cut through their weapons, bodies and armor indiscriminately as the copycat ninja used speed and kenjutsu to cut down his enemies. He just finished severing the arm of an orc before he spun and stabbed his blade backwards through the orc's back and heart. He spun once more to dodge a charging minotaur and lashed out with his blade and removed one of the minotaur's horns. He disappeared in a blur and cleared the immediate battlefield of 5 orcs before he turned to face the minotaur once more. The creature was intimidating as its nose ring glistened in the lightning and rain. The creature roared and charged once more. Kakashi replaced himself with a shadow clone and the minotaur charged right through it. When it came to a halt and turned around, there was the slightest shift in the earth before Kakashi erupted from it with his hands holding his purple katana. Senin Garashi, Kenjutsu style. Kakashi called out as he plunged the lightning blade up the minotaur's ass. The creature let out a demonic roar before it died due to internal electrocution by purple lightning through anal penetration. Maya cackled maniacally as she melted 3 orcs' faces off at once. She couldn't use the boil release in this rain, but she could damn well use her lava. The orcs were so slow that they made great targets. With Samui and Mabui at her back, Maya kept launching globs of lava from her mouth while cackling in between mouthfuls and lungs full of lava. Her first lava jutsu was more than enough for her potent bloodline to melt the faces off the pigs. She was grateful that she was fighting demons because it made it easier on her conscience for her to go all out. Kushina was screaming out in pleasure as she fought side by side with Minato in his fox form. She was lucky enough to fight against the remaining shinobi that survived Naruto's attack. She spun wildly and cut the heads off an Uchiha Jonin before her chakra chains impaled a Chunin attempting to attack her from behind. She rose from her crouch and slashed with her katana without looking at the Chunin she beheaded. She dashed forward to her next target, intent on keeping up with Minato. Their charge continued unabated until Kushina ran into an orc general. The thing was massive, and it towered over her while it wielded a cleaver that made the Kubakirabocho look small. The thing let out a scream and swung down with its cleaver. Its arm halted before its blow could land as several chains pierced its forearm. Kushina used the momentary surprise to slide underneath the orc's legs, and she lashed out with her two katanas and severed the tendons in the orc's ankles. The creature began toppling forward and Kushina ran up its back before she coated her katanas in hardened water and used it to penetrate the orc's hide. Moments later, a geyser of blood flooded the battlefield as it erupted in spurts from the severed neck. Minato used the wind blades on his tails to keep Kushina's battle with the orc general from being interrupted. However, a new opponent appeared in a charge as a Minotaur general appeared. Its double-bladed axe tore violently into the earth while Minato dodged with a jump. His powerful hind legs lashed out at the Minotaur's chest, and he pushed off to reset the battle. A Minotaur general was a lot for a three-tailed kitsune to handle, but Minato wasn't a typical kitsune. He was still Minato fucking Namikaze. Minato dodged a series of powerful and coordinated attacks from the Minotaur that towered 12 feet over him. The Minotaur roared in frustration as Minato dodged once more, and it cried out in pain as Minato's wind blades managed to do some real damage to its legs. With the creature's movement crippled, it was now Minato that was at the complete advantage. Minato disappeared in a blur of speed that followed a flash of lightning. The kitsune appeared behind the Minotaur general and used two of his tails to slam twin Rasengans into the creature's lower back. The creature was tossed forward unceremoniously onto the muddy earth and Minato ran up its back. His third tail slammed a Rasengan on the back of the creature's skull and scattered brain matter and bits of bone everywhere. Samui and Mabui worked in tandem to cover Maya's back. However, unlike Maya, they were fighting against shinobi. They dropped into the juncture between orcs and Konoha shinobi, which meant that they had the unpleasant task of taking human lives. Samui played the front line while Mabui started whipping out her pre-made tags. Explosions dotted the landscape around them, and each explosive roar was accompanied by screams of Konoha shinobi. Samui felt a presence behind her and saw a Hyuga Jonin sliding into position for his 8 trigrams, 64 palms. She slipped on the mud and was unable to avoid the attack. The first 2 jabs hit her tenketsu in her shoulders. Samui screamed in pain, but she was surprised to see that the attack was discontinued. She looked towards the Hyuga and saw that he was trapped and being electrocuted in an electric cage. Mabui was holding up a half-rat hand sign to keep the electric cage powered while her free hand kept throwing out tags. Samui repaid the favor to Mabui by throwing 3 kunai into the head of a Jonin that had managed to take her back. They were starting to get surrounded and Maya was getting uncomfortably far away. Before they could panic, Hayate, Yugao and a squad of Bolt appeared to fill in the gaps. With the reinforcements, the battle continued its bloody tempo as the blood price was pain in full for this war. Naruto was feeling more powerful than ever as he left destruction in his wake. Heaven's blessing glowed golden in power as it synchronized with Naruto's yokai cloak, and its edge was sharpened by Shinjutsu atop a dense layer of wind. It sliced effortlessly through the hordes and never lost its edge. Naruto continued his charge unchallenged and nearly unabated as he approached the Minotaur Lord. He wanted to topple the Titan and repay it for taking the lives of his kitsune kin. Naruto skid to a halt in front of the Titan and the creature roared, which caused its minions to clear the battlefield. "So, you are Naruto Stormbringer. I expected you to be taller," Minstro said dismissively as he heaved the golden halberd off the ground. Naruto cocked his head to the side and spoke just as dismissively, "You are uglier than I expected. You shouldn't have come here, fucker." Minstro snorted in amusement, "Demons speak in combat. I see that you are part demon, so do your best to amuse me, boy." Naruto nodded and Tempest chakra erupted around him. He went through 3 hand seals and clapped his hands together. In the blink of an eye, a tempest beam crashed into the armor of Minstro's chest. The armor had a hole burnt straight through it, but the chest only appeared to be singed. Minstro roared out a laugh before he charged with the halberd. Unlike his Minotaur comrades, Minstro's attack were graceful and didn't leave many openings for the human to exploit. It pressed Naruto and kept the Hanyu on the defensive as the Minotaurs watching roared out in support of their commander. Naruto jumped over a horizontal slash as ran up the pole of the halberd. Minstro yanked the shaft up in an attempt to throw Naruto into the air. Naruto countered by lashing out with his left hand, and a golden chakra chain erupted from it and tore into the creature's shoulder. Naruto pulled hard and simultaneously absorbed his chakra chain back into him. This caused Naruto to launch at the Minotaur like a speeding bullet, and he spun wildly with heaven's blessing. A great clang followed by the shearing of metal told Naruto that he managed to cut through the bottom third of the Minotaur's halberd. Minstro was aggravated that the Hanyu was able to break his prized halberd. He lashed out with the bladed bottom portion that may as well have been a greatsword all on its own. Naruto deflected the blow and kicked off the Minotaur's abdomen in an explosion of Tempest chakra. The violent chakra managed to wound the abdomen, but it was not much in the grand scheme of things. It just served to reset the fight. Naruto used the distance to break out his Titan killer. A golden Rasengan formed in his hand, and he funneled the power of lightning into the sphere. It began cackling with lightning, and the ball sparked as Naruto threw it towards the Minotaur Lord. Mitsuo began laughing as the sphere disappeared, but that changed moments later when the spear crashed into his chest and began piercing through it. Blood exploded from the wound and lightning crackled across the creature's form and electrocuted it. Naruto was more than a little surprised when the jutsu didn't burn a hole through the creature, but he guessed the battle would have been a little disappointing if it were that easy. Naruto didn't let him temporary advantage pass, and he blurred forward at insane speeds. He formed Tempest chains and wrapped them around his hands before Naruto jumped into a spiral and held both of his hands out in front of him. In his best imitation of the Inuzuka, he drilled into the Minotaur's chest while aiming for the point that the Rasengan weakened. Blood erupted from the wound and was immolated moments later by the potent chakra. The attack ground to a halt as Naruto's arms were buried in the Minotaur Lord's chest. Tempest chains flailed into the hole in the chest and began decimating internal organs in an attempt to kill the massive beast from the inside out. Naruto was nearly blown backwards by the spurt of blood that accompanied each beat of the Minotaur's shredded heart. The gross spectacle was made slightly better by the fact that the yokai cloak burned off the blood before it could settle onto his skin. Naruto received the warning from Hikari that it was time to pull back and rest, so he jumped nearly 100 meters into the air. He didn't even need to whistle before he saw Marika blurring towards him. He landed effortlessly atop her back, and he let his yokai cloak fade and the Senjutsu chakra recede. It was time for him to rest his coils and get ready for the real battle. Tearing out the roots and death of a cripple, there was a collection of screeches from the eagles that were hovering over the battlefield that signaled the retreat for the elite forces. The plan was for them to regroup and redeploy to cover the weak spots of the Allied charge. While chaos reigned supreme, Kushina and Minato jumped into the air together, and Florida was there to swoop under them and catch them. They climbed back into the sky and got to see the battlefield from an aerial point of view. As Naruto calmed his Senjutsu chakra and separated from Hikari's yokai, the clouds lightened, and sun started peeking through to illuminate the battlefield. The most prominent feature was the mile-wide crater that was edged by ripples of destruction and dead bodies. Around the immense crater, corpses were scattered and splotches of blood left their mark on the sundered earth. It was clear that the enemy force was in disarray, and it was perfect for the ensuing Allied charge. The front lines of the Allied forces were 500 meters away from the enemy's shattered lines, and the craziest part of the battle was about to begin. Kushina and Minato were taken to the back lines, and Kushina's keen eyes caught flickers of enemy movement that were circling around a far flank. She growled when she saw the blank masks, and she shouted to redirect Florida down. A couple of the eagles followed, and everyone was able to see what Kushina saw. The elites were going to deroot the forest. It was long overdue, and the Red Death would be more than happy to offer her services. Karen, who was back with the medical teams, was focusing the Eye of Kagura, her potent sensory ability, to keep track of the battlefield. Naruto's overwhelming aura had flooded her senses and dulled her to everything around her. Once Naruto powered down, she was able to extend her senses once more. She felt the clash of the main forces, and she could feel chakra signatures flickering out of existence at a startling rate. War was hell, and Karen couldn't escape from it due to her abilities. Karen cleared her mind and kept her senses spread. That was when she felt the collection of nearly 500 emotionless signatures flanking, and she sensed the plant creatures beginning to emerge from behind the medical caravan. She flared her chakra to get everyone's attention, and she channeled chakra into the necklace that Naruto gave her. With the signal sent, Karen set to work erecting the defensive barriers. Within a minute, 10 Naruto clones joined her, and one of those clones dispersed to inform the boss about what was going on. Kushina saw the barrier get erected, and she saw the plant creatures emerging from the ground. She saw the quick reaction forces start moving to engage the plant creatures, but they completely missed the root shinobi. She directed Florida down and let the massive bird of prey launch the opening attack. She jumped off before Minato and began taking her revenge on the bastards that started her whole journey to Kumo. Kushina was joined by Minato, then Kakashi, Kurenai, Anko, Yugito, Daru and C, who all took notice of the urgent request for reinforcements. 8 shinobi against 400 wasn't great odds, but reinforcements were on the way. Plus, root shinobi could never fight to their fullest potential. Without emotions, they never knew what they were fighting for. They just acted on orders and completed them without passion or emotion. They could never surpass their natural limits because the kind of growth required the very emotions that made them human. Danzo watched his forces getting decimated by a mere handful of shinobi. This was it, this was the decisive battle, and his veteran instincts told him that things were not going well. Despite the numerical advantage, Danzo could not fathom a way to defeat the Raikage nor the forces that backed him up. Despite that, Danzo was old, weary and stubborn as a mule. He was not going to retreat. He would rather die fighting and take some people with him before he went to whatever awaited him after death. Danzo unsealed his right arm and used his Sharingan eyes to their fullest as he counted the reinforcements that were arriving. Despite his old age, he was still able to best the first 5 shinobi that attempted to fight him. This was noticed immediately, and he was enveloped in a defensive circle of root shinobi that were entrapped by roughly 20 of the allied forces. Before Danzo could order the engagement, long, luscious and beautiful red hair caught his attention and he locked eyes with the Red Death, previously of Konoha. Kushina threw out 4 kunai that were 50 feet apart and a purple barrier sprung into existence. Kushina glared down the old cripple and a seal activated over her heart that countered the influence of Danzo's Sharingan. She stalked forward to him and the 10 root shinobi that were standing protectively in front of him. A wicked smile found its way onto her face. "You have no idea how long I have waited for this day, you evil cripple," Kushina said with a calm menace. Danzo growled, "I am glad that I will get to take my revenge on you, you disgraceful woman. You are the one that ruined everything. You are responsible for our fall." Kushina circled the root shinobi that were waiting on their master's orders as she replied, "Your own evil greed started this. You and Fugaku brought this onto yourselves. I simply took care of my family, as any mother should. I will skip gleefully into the next life knowing that you will rot in the pits of Yami." Root. Danzo ordered and the 10 root agents attacked in unison. Kushina danced through the opposition with twin swords lashing out. Blood sprayed in an artistic ode to the beauty of Kushina's dance. The deathly glory danced and shimmered on the battlefield for the next few minutes as souls were sent into the afterlife. Kushina flipped lively over a vacuum bullet and rolled forward gracefully from the pressurized explosion. Kushina ended her roll with one of her katanas in the gut of the final root and it was just her and Danzo remaining now. She saw the ghastly white arm that was dotted with 10 Sharingan eyes. She saw the Mangekyo Sharingan spinning and the cripple weaving through hand signs. A series of vacuum bullets crashed into a thick water wall and Kushina sent chains piercing through the wall of water towards the cripple. Danzo dodged and used his cane, that transformed into a tanto, to knock the chains aside. The battle increased in intensity as Kushina activated her chakra to its fullest and water encased her blades. Kushina spun while collecting, channeling and releasing her chakra with each slash of the sword. The volley of water blades collided with a vacuum wall or vacuum bullet as Danzo fought against the fierce redhead that used to be a prodigy of Konoha but was now a legend of Kumo. Finally, one of the water blades was able to penetrate his defenses and Danzo's torso fell forward off his lower body before he shimmered out of existence. Kushina stopped her dance and kept her blades at the ready when Danzo's body disappeared. Kushina dodged urgently as she felt a presence appear behind her. She brought one of her blades up in time to block Danzo's sword, but she was kicked violently in her chest. She rolled with the blow and came to a halt in a crouched position with one of her hands rubbing out the pain in her boob. Her armor dulled the impact, but it still hurt her tits, damn it. She growled menacingly as she took advantage of the standstill to determine what happened. The fight continued like this for 3 more killing blows that should have ensured Danzo's death, each time ended with the cripple shimmering out of existence. After the 4th death, Kushina noticed that 4 Sharingan eyes on his unnatural arm were closed, and she put 2 and 2 together. She spit blood out of her mouth and smiled a menacing smile with blood-covered teeth. Taking one of those vacuum shots to the head really hurt. Now, she had an idea of what she needed to do. "You are a disgusting cretin," Kushina began as she rose to her feet and let her chakra chains flail wildly behind her. "The best thing to do to cretins is smush them, eradicate them, then burn them to crisps." Danzo growled as perspiration dotted his brow. He had been pushing himself and, despite his best efforts, his chakra was not limitless. Wretched bitch. You cannot defeat me. Kushina's smile broadened as more chains erupted. I immobilized the fucking Kyuubi after I gave birth to my Sochi. This is nothing. Your withered and crippled ass could never be enough to finish me. Kushina's chains darted forward, and Danzo was forced to begin dodging once again. The adamantine chains pressed him and cornered him into the barrier. His Sharingan saw the chains tapping 8 points on the ground and Danzo's eye widened. He fought to escape his impending doom, but one of the chains took advantage of his panic and pierced the shoulder of the ghastly white arm. Danzo cried out in pain as the adamantine chain started wrapping around the arm formed from Hashirama's cells. He tried to activate the Izanagi once more to simply escape the situation, but the adamantine chain was disrupting the flow of chakra to the Sharingan eyes. Danzo panicked further as another chain pierced his gut, then another wrapped around his neck, legs, torso and left arm. Danzo was completely encased in chains that sapped his chakra and disabled his resistance. Kushina activated the 8 seals that were placed on the ground and Danzo's chakra ceased moving through his chakra circulatory system. His old and weary body could no longer stand and support his weight without the reinforcement of chakra. The cripple's thoughts raced in panic as his chakra was drained away at an alarming rate and the chains grew in thickness and durability with the presence of the foreign chakra. Kushina smiled wickedly as she walked forward towards Danzo. You know, evil cripple, I think I will start by removing that arm. A shink of her sword unsheathing and a click of its resheathing later and the arm fell to the ground in a splotch as the chains unfurled. Now, that right eye of yours doesn't look like it belongs to you, does it? Let's see. Kushina tapped her chin in an exaggerated thinking pose before she smiled and pulled out a sealing tag. She created a miniature explosive tag and applied it over the occipital bone with a wicked grin on her face. Now, let's see how you like this. I hope it doesn't kill you, so that I can enjoy torturing you. Danzo's normal eye widened in panic as Kushina formed the ram hand sign. A miniature explosion occurred that was followed by a spray of blood that spurt from a hole in Danzo's head where the Sharingan eye used to be. He screamed out in unimaginable pain when his frontal cortex was exposed to the world. He wanted to use his hand to cover the wound, but he was still wrapped up in the damnable chains. Kushina cackled in glee and tapped her chin again in thought. She snapped her fingers and one of the chakra chains tapped Danzo on the forehead and a seal appeared where the chain touched. Danzo's screams of pain grew louder as the sealing arts, enhanced sensitivity seal activated. It was a favorite among the torture and interrogation community because it heightened neural sensitivity by nearly 100 times normal. She then began using the sharp tips of her chains to poke holes in non-vital spots all over Danzo's body. The sheer pain that Danzo experienced in his final moments was unquantifiable. The cripple died with his head lopped off and body burned by Kushina. The acrid stench of his burning flesh didn't disappear in a shimmer this time. The cripple was dead for good. Kushina took a moment to look up into the stormy sky through the barrier. With her head fully leaned back she took a deep breath and released a fearsome victory cry. Fugaku's fall. Fugaku hovered over the battlefield, and he frowned deeply as he realized his forces were going to lose despite the reinforcements from the demonic realm. He didn't expect the Kitsune clan to get involved nor to have the 5- and 6-tailed biju participate in the attack. The Bijudama that were launched early in the battle were devastating in nature and took out many of the orcs. The complete disarray of his forces made it impossible for him to rally them through conventional means. Oh well, it was time for the world to recognize the true god in their midst. Naruto was riding atop Marika and he felt the man he was waiting for hovering in the sky. Was he an idiot or was he just that prideful? The sky was his domain, and it was time for Naruto to put the false god in his place. Naruto once again synchronized with Hikari and commanded the natural energy around him. The ever-present clouds darkened in response and the storm started once more. The start of the storm was indicated by 5 shots of lightning that all converged on a single point in an explosion of Raten chakra. Fugaku used the chakra he had gathered for the Diva path and immediately converted it to the Preta path as his sharp eyes picked up on the beginning flicker of lightning. The chakra formed a blue barrier around his body that absorbed most of the chakra that was incorporated into the lightning strikes. However, Fugaku was confounded when he was still damaged by the lightning. He didn't know that the Preta path refused to absorb the Senjutsu chakra because his body would not be able to handle it. Fugaku roared in pain and frustration as lightning chakra locked up his body in a burning pain. Marika dove down and gave out a fearsome cry as she pierced through the air in a predatorial dive. Naruto stood in a crouch on her back, and he saw Fugaku dodge Marika's talons. Naruto launched himself at high speeds and kicked Fugaku out of the air. Fugaku sailed through the air and crashed onto the muddy battleground in a spatter of mud. Naruto air stepped down and prepared 2 Rasen Shuriken that he threw at the downed form. Fugaku rose and his Rinnegan easily picked up in the incoming hyper-dense balls of chakra. He held out his hands and focused the Preta path to his front. The chakra was absorbed into his hands, but the hands were shredded by the wind blades and the tenketsu were burning from the dense chakra that was forcibly absorbed through his hands. Despite the burn, Fugaku grinned wickedly as he felt invigorated by the chakra. Fugaku changed his arm into a series of blades as Naruto descended from the air with his katana coated in tempest chakra. The blades stood up to the volatile chakra for a few attacks, but Fugaku winced in pain as the Asura Path's creations were shredded by the chakra. Fugaku needed to change things up and he lashed out with an almighty push. The terrifying power of the Diva Path used the gathered chakra and forced it out in an explosive push. Naruto flew backwards and instinctively used his control over the wind to slow his flight by creating multiple layers of air cushions. His chakra chains tore into the ground and slowed him further. He ended up landing backwards in a skid as his feet dug into the muddy ground. His feet blurred into motion and left a crackle of wind and lightning in his wake. He caught Fugaku during his recoil period and the greatsword was unslung and he lashed out viciously. Fugaku formed a shield with the Asura Path to absorb the blow. The shield shattered under the great might of Naruto's strength and Fugaku was the one to get catapulted backwards this time. Naruto didn't stop there, he gathered Chirka and formed it in his hand. He channeled the Rasengan into his hand and threw the electric orb toward his airborne opponent. Fugaku saw the gathering of chakra and he saw it disappear. He was on the defensive and he righted himself in time to see the chakra re-emerge. The lightning sphere sparked back into existence a mere 5 meters in front of him. Fugaku had enough time to activate the Preta path and it spared him most of the impact. However, once again, Fugaku felt the jutsu impact and inflict damage on his body. Okay, Hikari-chan, so he can't absorb the full jutsu. Why is that? Naruto thought as he was analyzing what was happening. It is the senjutsu component. He may have my father's eyes, but he is not a sage. He can't process the natural energy. Hikari postulated. Naruto nodded externally and smirked, then let's see him deal with this. 2 Rasengans formed in his hands, and they glowed a light and placid green color that just exuded natural energy. He blurred forward at the Hokage that had come to a stop. Naruto had to drop the Rasengans and he formed a wind wall to absorb the brunt gravitational force. Fugaku threw at him. He was still blown backwards despite the amount of wind he channeled into the technique. Damn cheat code eyes. Naruto picked himself out of the mud and the yokai cloak still glowed vividly around him. He easily shook off the damage from the gravity and he decided that it was time for a regime change. Hundreds of clones sprouted around Naruto and took positions around the battlefield that seemed recently vacated. It was almost as if the shinobi and creatures fighting knew that they didn't want to be caught up in a fight between two such powerhouses. Golden clones closed in on Fugaku and they were repelled by a 360-degree wave of gravity that sent most of the clones flying backwards. Fugaku was surprised that the clones weren't dispelled outright, but he couldn't think on it because the real Naruto was tearing his way through the mud towards him. Each step was filled with wind and lightning that propelled him forward faster and faster. The distance closed rapidly, and Naruto lashed out with 2 Senjutsu Rasengans at Fugaku's torso. Fugaku activated the Preta path and was able to catch one of the fists in his hand. However, the other Rasengan slammed into Fugaku's chest and began violently rending his flesh apart. Fugaku desperately tried to absorb the chakra, but he couldn't process the natural energy. He released the other hand and jumped backwards with the violent momentum of the Rasengan, which propelled him into the muddy ground and formed a new trench in a violent fashion. Fugaku's chest roared in pain as a few of his ribs were exposed to the world. Some words came into his mind, and he called out Naraka Path. A statue emerged from the ground in a ghastly fashion and its tongue formed a pathway into the mouth. Fugaku walked hesitantly into the mouth of the King of Hell and moments later he walked out perfectly healed. This confounded Naruto, but he just figured that he would have to keep at it. Naruto did indeed keep at it and many other craters were formed over the next 20 minutes of the battle. The two were so deeply engrossed in their own fight that Fugaku failed to notice that the allied forces were really decimating what remained of his own forces. His son was captured, the other remaining Jinchuriki was armless and captured and the Orc Lord was killed by the divine bolts. The willpower of the allied forces was far greater than the shinobi operating on fear and threats of death from the Hokage. Naruto's yokai cloak was flickering as Hikari was struggling to maintain the connection and extend it. Naruto was pushing past his limits and damaging his chakra coils, but she knew that it was necessary to finish this fight. She looked through Naruto's eyes at the disheveled form of Fugaku and knew that he was close to his limit as well. He had summoned numerous animals, used the Diva Path excessively and Naruto had repeatedly smashed his Ashura Path's constructs. Despite that, Hikari panicked when she saw what Fugaku was doing. Fugaku held the weight of a black hole in his hand, and he tossed it into the air with a maniacal grin on his face. The Chibaku Tensei was literally a black hole, and it would suck in everyone present in its godly demonstration of the glory of gravity. This was the power of a god, and Fugaku cackled madly despite the immense chakra drain that left him panting on a knee. Naruto felt the pull of the black hole and resisted it. He thought that the only way to end such a jutsu would be to kill its creator. He gathered his remaining resolve and tossed a Hiraishin kunai at Fugaku's position. The pull of the black hole caused the kunai to miss high, but Naruto appeared in a golden flash over the exhausted form of Fugaku. He lashed out with tempest chains and was surprised when they were able to penetrate Fugaku's defense. He retracted the chains and pushed off an air cushion towards Fugaku. Naruto pelted towards Fugaku with both hands held out in front of him. He used both hands to gather and spin more of the natural chakra than he ever had before. The Odama Senpo Rasengan crashed into Fugaku Uchiha, the god I'm Hokage of Konoha, and violently shredded him. The power of the Rinnegan attempted to resist by absorbing the chakra, but Fugaku's body was at its limits. The eyes didn't belong to him, and they had taken a great toll on the mortal form that dared to use them in such a reckless fashion. Fugaku's arms were shredded first, then his head followed by his torso and finally his lower body. Bit by bit the Hokage was disintegrated into nothingness by the power of nature, and Naruto finally knew that this battle was over. Or at least it would have been if it weren't for the rampant black hole sucking up chunks of earth, trees, corpses, enemies and allies indiscriminately. Naruto's chains dug into the ground and kept him anchored as he thought of a way to counter the insanity of the black hole. Hikari, pour everything we have left into this. We cannot hold back because too many of our allies will die if that thing continues to grow and destabilizes, Naruto said through his exhaustion. He could see and feel the forms of his own allies being sucked into the black hole already. Hikari frowned but nodded with a determined look on her face. Okay, Ruto. I am with you to the end. Naruto used his chains to keep him anchored, but 9 foxtails folded over his shoulders while 2 hands focused in front of him. Orbs of wind, water, lightning, positive and negative chakra began gathering in front of Naruto at the tips of his tails. His hands held up the immense weight of the dense chakra and orbs continued gathering into a ball. The orb started as the size of a basketball, then it grew to a wrecking ball and Naruto's feet cracked into the earth when it grew to nearly 10 meters in diameter. Naruto roared and used his remaining chakra to launch the Bijudama Tempest style towards the black hole. Naruto's chakra chains began disintegrating as he no longer possessed the chakra to maintain them. He collapsed to his knee before he began getting lifted into the air. He barely had the strength to keep his head looking into the sky when the Tempest bomb collided with the center of the black hole nearly 500 meters in the sky. The resulting explosion disintegrated Earth, bodies and wood indiscriminately as it expanded further and further. The expansion culminated in an explosion of black, red, blue and white energy as the black hole destabilized and exploded. The pressure, shrapnel and explosion blossomed in the sky and rained down hell on the earth. Those with enough wherewithal erected defenses. Those near Uzumaki were shielded by barriers. Those unfortunate enough to be caught in the backlash faced an untimely death. All that could be said is that the explosion rained down hell on earth after the culminating clash of 2 mighty powers. The fallout inflicted casualties indiscriminately and left scars on the lands and hearts of many shinobi. Recovery and stabilization. Why does hell appear on earth so much more frequently than heaven? Why are people so tempted by the evil and resistant to do what they know is good? Why is it that people are inclined to remember the negative more than the positive? Why does man see the need to control and dominate other man? Why does war never change? Why do the gods let man run amok and sow such havoc? There were no happy answers to the questions that seemed to simmer in Naruto's mind as he lay in an unconscious state. His mind wasn't all there as he floated within the void of chakra exhaustion. Each time he began attempting to answer the questions, his exhausted mind blanked and the question flittered away into the void only to be replaced by the next existential question. Time was undefined as Naruto's weary mind hovered in the void for what seemed like eternity. Through the darkness, a vast ocean of chakra that looked like a brilliant orange galaxy reached out and searched for the figure floating in the void. Warmth filled the emptiness and drew Naruto's form into it as if it was pulled to it as if by gravity. Life filled the void and Hikari's voice followed it. The reassuring feeling of the soul link reconnecting let Naruto know that everything was going to be okay. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath once he realized that he was back within Hikari's cabin and wrapped in the warmth of her tails. On the outside, Naruto's body was kept safe within the sealed defenses of Uzushiagakure. None of the girls wanted to risk another plant creature devouring their Reikage, lover or mate. Samui and Mabui were close enough after Naruto launched his final attack that Samui was able to paralyze the black and white Zetsu. Mabui had enough wherewithal to lock it in a chakra-absorbing barrier. Then the two watched the white Zetsu dissolve and leave a black mass of insane chakra. Mabui took her time making a molecular disintegration seal that she had learned from Mito Uzumaki's notes. Needless to say, Black Zetsu, unknown sun/chakra parasite of Kaguya, was no more. As Naruto recovered within his ancestral homeland, Kushina tore apart Konoha's council. She took great enjoyment alongside Minato in his kitsune form when they cornered the civilian council within the bunker. They exposed all of their sins before Kushina's chains and Minato's wind blades left them in chunks. After the obvious targets that wronged Kushina, she calmed down and thought things out more rationally. Marika, Minato, Chome, Kokuo, Kurotsuchi, Ao and Yahiko watched along as Kushina tore apart the council, and they held their own war council that determined the fates of the guilty. After the unconditional surrender, the Allied forces moved in and occupied Konoha. The prevailing philosophy was that the children and younger generations were innocent. Kushina was insistent on this, and the other Kage agreed once the Biju and Demon clans backed her. That didn't stop a slew of executions from following the defeat of Fugaku. Uzumaki truth seals and screening seals were used as evidence upon interrogation of every surviving shinobi and influential civilian. The screening took 3 days as clan head after clan head pleaded their case. Shinobi families did the same and many were spared death while quite a few died unceremoniously. Mikoto, Itachi and Sazumi revealed themselves and were allowed to determine the fate of the Uchiha. Sasuke was jailed along with the other Uchiha Jinchuriki, but their fates were only on hold until Naruto woke up to extract the Biju. The Uchiha elders were universally beheaded, and their bodies were burned in a joint grave with the tombstone of Blood Traitor. The Uchiha children, non-shinobi parents, clan vassals and clan artisans were all sealed with prisoner seals and the clan assets were seized. Overall, the Uchiha clan paid the most for its offenses and there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth. Each of the shinobi clans were also sealed, but they were spared the prisoner seals. They were given probation seals that could paralyze them and lock their chakra upon activation. The Kurama, Hyuga, Yamanaka, and Inuzuka were all sealed in this way to ensure compliance. Each of the clans were truly fractured and diminished from the battle's losses. Each of the clans looked hopeless as if they were dead men walking. The Fire Capital also surrendered unconditionally when they stopped long enough to realize that a Zetsu clone was imitating the Fire Lord. The samurai captain responsible for the capital's defense was the one that cut off the Fire Lord's hand and saw that he didn't bleed normal blood. Iwa and Ame had the honor of occupying the Fire Capital until the other daimyo could meet and determine its fate. They mainly just held up operations in the city until the leaders decided what needed to be done. Naruto awoke 4 days after the final attack within the state-of-the-art medical wing of Uzushio's hospital. His eyes squeezed in protestation of the blinding fluorescent lights, his nose wrinkled at the overwhelming antiseptic smell. His muscles were weary and tight from the immense overuse of yokai, chakra and natural energy. His throat was completely parched and drier than Gaara's sand gourd in the middle of Wind Country's desert. His body was wrapped in bandages that contained seals to aid in his recovery, which made him feel stiffer than he already was. Naruto groaned and leaned over on the bed to grab the cup of water that was sitting on the bedside table. He grabbed the cup and sucked it down greedily. He looked out the window and saw that it was night time, which made him curse the fact that the hospital lights were left on. He saw that Tsunami, Rias and Karen were there waiting for him, and they were all passed out in a variety of uncomfortable looking positions. Rather than wake them up, he closed his eyes and dove into the mindscape. He cracked the bedroom door open silently and slid into the bed next to a sleeping Hikari. The great Kyuubi no Kitsune was cuddling into a Naruto body pillow. It was really a cute sight. Naruto slid into the big spoon position and kissed her neck lightly before closing his eyes. This time the blackness didn't bother him because he was wrapped up in the crimson warmth of his Kitsune queen. When morning came, the reunion filled with hugs and kisses began. The children were there as well, and Naruto waved off the Bolt officers to spend an hour with his family. It was heartwarming and much needed because Naruto knew the morbid duties of a raikage would call upon him soon. One can't just fight a battle including tens of thousands and not expect a messy cleanup on the other end. Naruto kissed his mates goodbye and forced his body to move despite the protest of the doctors. Things were going well until he ran into Tsunade and Shizune, who each wore twin scowls on their faces. Despite Tsunade cracking her knuckles, Naruto convinced her to let him go. It was hard to argue against the advanced healing factor of a Hanyu that had the Kyuubi sealed into him. Plus, duty was most definitely calling, and Naruto didn't want to miss the cleanup. Walking out of the hospital, Naruto was glommed onto by Maya, who was his designated ride since he couldn't use chakra to summon or Hiraishin. Maya had Virginia and Georgia already summoned and waiting for him. It was great having his wives able to summon the eagles at times like this. Naruto leaned into Virginia as she cuddled her massive head into him. Words didn't need to be exchanged between the two. The experiences they went through together made words unnecessary due to the intense level of trust and intimacy built over years of experience together. Naruto kipped onto Virginia's back and Maya flew on Georgia, who also insisted on staying by Naruto's side. They flew over the elemental ocean and made it into fire country within an hour. Naruto saw the scars left from the Battle of Wave as he blurred over the landscape. The scars soon disappeared, and the beautiful landscape of fire country blurred together for the next hour as he traveled to Konoha. The marred landscape just outside of Konoha was both magnificent and ominous as Virginia descended in preparation to land. There was a great cheer that filled the air when Virginia landed in front of Konoha's gates. The city was damaged, and the outer walls had seen better days. The carnage that originated nearly 3 miles north of the walls reached the walls of Konoha. The forest was flattened and destroyed with chunks of earth and shredded trees everywhere. The walls were manned by allied shinobi and the flags of Kumo, Kiri, Ame and Uzu were flying over the front gate. Naruto was surrounded by the surviving shinobi, and he smiled at them wearily as he made his way into the village he once called a home. Before Naruto could take his first steps into the village, he was glommed by Itachi, Mabui, Samui, Amy and then Maya joined in from behind. The girls each got a kiss before they walked through the village to the Hokage Tower. The village was way quieter than he remembered, but he figured that was because people were told to stay in their homes until everything was decided. The girls brush him up to date on the latest developments and he was just sorry that he missed the execution of the village council. Mabui held the door to Konoha's council room open for Naruto and he walked in to see Kushina, Kurotsuchi, Yahiko and Daru sitting around the main table. Yugito, Akatsuki, Haku, Nagato and Konan were also in the room. They all rose when they saw Naruto entering and whatever they were talking about no longer mattered. He gave them all a tired smile and waved them back into their seats. Let's get this going. I want to get out of this shithole of a village as soon as I can, Naruto said cheekily. Are you going to be okay, Sochi? Kushina asked with concern lacing her voice. Naruto nodded, yeah, I just pushed myself too far when trying to break that damn gravity ball. Why don't you fill me in on what I missed and what the plan is? The mood sobered a little bit and Kurotsuchi spoke first. Well, Gramps finally kicked the bucket and so did my brother. Final count of my forces indicates that we lost nearly half of what we brought. Ao took over, Zabuza died along with 300 of our shinobi. Daru looked like he didn't want to speak, but he relented. Raikage-sama, our forces were leading the charge when the gravity sphere was loosed. We lost nearly 800 shinobi that included Dodai, Shi and Amoe. Naruto was holding up well, but that last name hit him like a sledgehammer to the face. He had been with Amoe since he was 7 years old and Amoe was more of a brother than anyone else in the Divine Bolts or Kumo forces. Naruto slumped in his chair and his chin fell to his chest. His body convulsed and shed tears for a minute before deep and shaky breaths attempted to calm him down. Continue. Naruto muttered. Yahiko spoke, Ame suffered 250 dead and many injuries, but we will survive. Kushina spoke in a motherly tone this time. Uzu suffered minimal casualties, and there is more good news. Danzo, Fugaku, some black parasite that was the origin of the plant creatures, the Jinchuriki and Konoha's council have all been neutralized. On top of that, it was proven that the fire daimyo was killed by one of the plant creatures and it was imitating him. The fire capital has agreed to concede to our demands. Naruto nodded, and I assume that is what this meeting is about? Kurotsuchi nodded, yup. So, your mother was telling me that you plan to release all biju. Care to elaborate on that? Naruto shrugged, I am strong enough to release the Kyuubi and let her return home. I believe Gaara, and Yugito also consent to this. Which means that after I rip the biju out of the Uchiha, the biju will all be returned to Makai. With the portals open, my hope is that humanity can negotiate with the demonic realm. Each side stands to gain more from cooperation than attempted domination. Ao nodded but hesitated for a moment before asking, aren't you married to the Kyuubi? Naruto nodded, indeed I am. Hikari will be able to traverse back and forth, and her mating cycle is in a little over 2 years. You have nothing to fear from me nor the Kitsune clan. All I wish for is a world working together to become a better place. For your assistance in this war, I will share all Kumo knowledge with you, which includes our agricultural reforms and practices. Kushina stood up at this, I will offer the same. Fuinjutsu is the key to understanding this world and I will open a school for international training on Uzushiagakure. There will be rules that are linked to contracts signed to ensure that my clan's knowledge will only be used for good. Yahiko stood up next, Ame will offer our industrial techniques to assist in rebuilding and development. Ao, catching on to the trend, stood next, we can offer our marine techniques and shipping. We will also offer to secure the elemental oceans from pirates and other disruptors. Finally, Kurotsuchi stood up, we have a variety of earth techniques that should be able to help. If you all are serious about working together, then Iwa will play its part. Naruto nodded with a smile on his face, good. Now, what do we have left to do to clean up Konoha and Fire Country? Daru sighed, it has been so damned bothersome. The council is mostly dead, the Uchiha are awaiting sentencing, the remaining clans all have probation seals on them. Those dissenters that provided information have been allowed to join their clans while they are locked down to their compounds. For the most part, Konoha is destroyed. They lost over 3,000 shinobi yesterday and they will be in need of massive assistance to simply recover. Kushina added, there are a total of 1,156 shinobi remaining in Konoha. Before the war, that number was over 8,000. There are 26,000 civilians alive currently. The Bank of Konoha and Fire Capital have a total of 18 billion ryu and that doesn't count their assets. The question becomes how to divide the assets and what we should do with Fire Country, Naruto sighed, that includes what we should do with Wind Country since the government there was toppled by the Uchiha clan. So, who wants what? Kurotsuchi cleared her throat, we have no need of Suna since they have many of the same minerals that we do in our country. We really need more agricultural capabilities. Kushina shrugged, I don't need land. Uzu has annexed Wave, so I would like to claim the northern region of Fire Country so that I can secure land trade routes from the bridge. Ao nodded, we would like some of the port cities to make trade easier and avoid tariffs. Everyone looked to Ame and Yahiko rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly, well, we could expand Ame's border and take the northwestern region of Hai no Kuni and the northeastern region of Kaze no Kuni. That would be a natural expansion of our borders and grant us access to resources we don't have. Naruto nodded at that, so, we would essentially be taking away most of the northeastern coast from Hai no Kuni. That sounds fair to me but I don't think Hai no Kuni will like it. We can divide up the missions and regulate what missions Konoha gets. How do we want to handle the appointment of a new cage? This question caused everyone to pause. Kushina volunteered an option, we put our conditions into a blood contract and allow them to select a cage. The cage will be mandated to sign the contract. We can offer the same solution to the daimyo. The way I see it, we have them by the balls, and we should use it to get what we want. Naruto took over after that, the blood contracts are a good idea. In fact, I think creating a neutrality agreement for all 5 cage bound by blood would be a good thing. That being said, it is now time for me to ask each of you to be the better men and women I know you are. The people of Fire Country are not completely innocent, but they were merely following the orders of their leaders. We should be merciful in our victory to make way for a better future. Kurotsuchi was growling, I lost my father, brother and grandfather to these bastards. Naruto nodded with an understanding smile on his face, and I killed an untold number of fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, aunts and uncles during this war as well. We have the power to effect change and we shouldn't squander this opportunity for simple revenge, Kurotsuchi-chan. Kurotsuchi clenched her fist and wiped away a tear before nodding slowly. Understood, Reikage-sama. 3 years later, Kiryu, Kitsune territory of Makai, Naruto was sitting in a medical room next to Hikari that was in her humanoid form. She was panting and covered in sweat while Tsunade, Hinata and Shizune took care of her medical needs and the needs of the 5 children that were just born. Each of the children had small fox ears that were blonde or orange in color with a single tail to match. Naruto remained with his hand held firmly by the queen of the Kitsune. You did great, my love, Naruto said with a magnificent smile on his face despite the pain emanating from his crushed hand. Hikari looked up wearily to Naruto, where are our kits? Naruto smiled, they are getting cleaned off. They are just fine and perfectly healthy. I am so proud of you, Kyuheim. Hikari found a smile working its way onto her face as her red hair clung to her form. Thanks, my king. Once I get cleaned up, we can get the rest of the family in here. Naruto shook his head and chuckled, they are all running amok at the festival. Just get your strength together for the presentation. Hikari closed her eyes and took a deep breath, but her rest was interrupted by 5 kits being placed in her arms and across her chest. Her crimson eyes shone in joy as she wrapped her tails around her kits and held them close. Naruto leaned over and allowed his tails to encase them as well. They remained like this for a bit before Naruto rose and placed a kiss of gratitude on Hikari's sweet lips. 30 minutes later, Hikari and Naruto walked out onto the balcony of the central tree that overlooked Karyu. The Kitsune clan was formed up below and the 8 other biju were present with representatives from each of their respective clans. The summoning eagles, snakes, salamanders and crows were also present among the crowd of kitsune as representatives of the summoning realm. In addition, there were 4 Uzumaki women in the crowd with 7 blonde or red-headed children running around. Then the group of Naruto's official wives were waiting for him on the balcony with each of them holding their own children and swollen bellies. Or in Sanami's case, the 3 children that Naruto had blessed her with along with Inari. Naruto walked forward in his red kimono flanked by Hikari who was wearing a red, ceremonial yukata. 18 tails, 9 blonde and 9 orange, flickered behind the royal couple of the Kitsune clan. The 2 of them looked regal and proud as they walked out of the enclosure. They carried their children forward to the edge of the balcony and the Kitsune clan erupted in yips while the humans present cheered. The other demonic clans, summoning clans and biju bowed their heads in respect to the queen of the Kitsune and the king of demons. Naruto went through each of his children and introduced them to his kin, clan and demon realm. These kids represented the treaty between the human, demonic and summoning realms. The treaty represented the hope for the future, a future of peace. That was why the feeling was so jubilant as Naruto lifted his children one by one and shared their names. This beautiful red-headed girl is granted the name Inari, in honor of the goddess of the foxes. This little kid, with his blonde hair and orange tips, is Romo, in honor of the sage. My life is blessed, and my heart is won by this one's yokai. This little girl, with her beautiful red coat and white tips is named Shina, in honor of my mother. My second boy has the prankster spirit in him. I can feel the mischievous nature in his yokai already. We give him the name Kinnu as homage to Susanoo, god of storms and mischief. Finally, my son that electrocuted me upon first touch, to him I shall grant the name of Tempest. Naruto allowed the cheers to go on for some time before he handed the kits off to his wives and stepped forward with Kurama's hand in his. We have made great strides in the name of peace over the last 3 years. You have each honored me with your sincere efforts and diligent work. It has been glorious to see 3 realms prosper and it is my hope that this will continue for future generations. To my dearest friends, family, people, demons and summons, I simply wish to say thank you. Naruto and Hikari bowed and left the gathering to go wild in celebration of the newborn princes and princesses of the demon realm. Alright guys, that's it for this one. Once again, show some love to Mr. BJ Dakush for writing this amazing story. He has some more awesome stories coming your way real soon, so again, please show him some love in the comments. I will pin a comment from him. Anyways, until next time, peace.